Oh, that's. Good evening, board members. Good evening, staff. Folks in the audience, welcome today. Let the record show that today is September the 15th. The time is 7:02, and we will now call the Amherst County Board of Supervisors meeting to order. Board members, I would like to amend the agenda by adding a closed session at the end to deal with personnel. With that addition, is there a motion to approve the agenda? A motion on the floor by Ms. Moore. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The agenda as amended is approved. Please stand for the invocation and the pledge of allegiance. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this wonderful community that we live in. We thank you for this wonderful country that we live in. Dear Lord, please give the board members the wisdom to make good decisions for the county, and above all else, make decisions that are pleasing to you. Dear Lord, we ask that you bless our public safety officers. We ask that you bless our law enforcement officers. And Lord, we ask that people's eyes be opened to see the value that these people bring to our community and what our community would look like if we didn't have such good people. We ask that board members, members of the community, our young people, that they learn to show compassion and they learn to show respect. Dear Lord, we ask that the things that we do with this board, that they're pleasing to you. We ask that there are things that will keep people in this community, that this community will thrive. And dear Lord, we ask that our young people will want to stay here and lend their talents to help this community grow. Dear Lord, in these things we ask, in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we will now open up the meeting to citizen comments. We have citizen comments, which are just anything that you may want to speak about that's going on here in the community. And then we will have 4 public hearings. So if you're here for those public hearings, we ask that you wait and hold your comments till then, okay? We will now open up citizen comments. Is there anyone here wishing to speak? And I have Emily Harper. Ms. Harper? Sure. Come to the podium and give us your name and your address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Okay, thank you.
My name is Emily Harper. I live at 142 Riverbend.
You may want to bring that up just a little bit so we can hear you. There you go.
I live at 142 Riverbend Lane, Gladstone. Is it technically Nelson County? Forgive me for that one. I'm a retired director of recreation in Nelson County, worked as a recreation specialist in Amherst County before I went to Nelson. I want to talk to you about the Virginia Blue Ridge Railway Trail. It is very important to me, several other people, a lot of other people. But I want to share with you my experience as to why the trail is a valuable resource for Nelson and Amherst County. There are many, many people that use this trail for exercise and right now for stress control, to get outside, to have some place to go, to take the kids. It's used regularly by hikers, bicyclists, and not as much horseback riders, but it is a great place for them to come. They have, the parking lot at, on 151, and several people, they come quite a distance to ride it. Majority of users through the week are local residents, but on the weekends, it gets sometimes very busy with people, Charlottesville, Richmond, surrounding areas. There are other people every once in a while. I meet one that's traveling, that's seen it on a website and is interested. Trail use has grown a lot since COVID-19, gives people a chance to get out. But we had on Facebook I saw a question, where can I take my son that's safe to ride a bike? And there were 5 or 6 answers that said, Virginia Blue Ridge Railway Trail. It's a great place. There's one road crossing, very safe for kids. It is listed on several websites, but on the Trail Link, which is a national website for different trails across the country, has 5 stars on that. So, and it explains what it is. So what I'm asking is to please fund the repairs. The repair is at 3.5 miles. Excuse me. The trail is 7 miles long. So it's very, very important to have that fixed so people have access to the entire trail. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Harper. We appreciate it. Next, we have Janet Hunter. Hunter, give us your name, address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
I'm Janet Hunter. I live at 8873 Rockfish River Road in Schuyler. I am currently president of the Pioneer River Rail Trail Foundation, and I'm also here just to speak in support of reallocating the funds for the necessary repairs to the trail. Last time I spoke with you folks, it was the request to designate the Amherst portion of the trail in honor of Stephen Hopi Martin, which was done. I've always found both Nelson and Amherst boards to be cooperative and helpful when it has come to trail issues, and I was just asking that the repair money do be reallocated because we would like to see it done before rather than after this damage has been done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hunter. Next, we have Tim Weyer. Where, give us your name, address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Tim Ware. I live at 405 Cherry Hill Road, Amherst, Virginia. I've lived in my town of Amherst my whole life, and part of the Amherst Mountain Biking Club, and we have trails out here in Amherst, but we frequently visit the Piney River trails, and I know the part that needs repair done is on the Amherst side. And the last get together we had what we call Mountain Bike Mondays. Everybody meets, and we had over 20-some people, 20-some families come out, different, with 20-some people in total, 2 dozen or more. And it's just, in part, you know, with the corona and everything, it's very important for people to get out and get some exercise. And it's such a nice trail. I do it, I use it a lot. And I've passed people on the trail that I know within the community, and a lot of people use it. And just want to see the county fund the money to do the repairs. And, you know, like the other people said, I've seen people from all over out of state parking lot, tags in the parking lot, and they do make their way into Amherst. And like I said, we're doing our work to try to get our trails recognized more, but everybody really enjoys I call it the Piney River Trail. Everybody enjoys the Blue Ridge Trail, so I hope y'all would allocate the money to do the repairs.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. Next, we have Mr. Ahmadesian, and you may be here for a public hearing. Mr. Ahmadesian. Are you here? For the public hearing? Okay. All right, that's all we've got on the list. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak? Mr. Hopkins?
Hello, everybody. Bob Hopkins, Executive Director, Amherst County Service Authority. I was up at the courthouse doing some research in the deed room yesterday, and this has happened a couple of times. They've got several plat cabinets with plats about this big. I mean, they're big drawings, and they've got no way to copy them unless they do it in pieces, which means you end up with 15 pieces of paper that you've got to go back and try to piece together. They also have no way to scan them, so they could be either emailed or put on a jump drive. And I was up there yesterday, would have really liked to have gotten a couple of plats that would help us address an issue that we've got at the Seminole Plaza Shopping Center, but there's no way they can copy them. And I'd like to request and recommend that somehow some money be found to get them a piece of equipment so that can be done. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Is there anyone else wishing to speak during public comment? Well, I see Bo over there. He's our only 4-legged visitor. I'm assuming that he is here to support the trail. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, for no one else here is wishing to speak during citizens' comment, we will now close citizen comment and open it up for the public hearing. The first one is revisions to Chapter 14. Mr. Lockerbie.
Yes, ma'am. There we go. Madam Chair, these are the revisions to Chapter 14 of the code that we've been talking about now for quite some time. I guess it's been over a year at this point. But to go through and recapitulate what these amendments do, the first thing is that we're abolishing the merchant's capital tax, which is a tax which has long existed in this county, where we tax all of the capital that retail and wholesale merchants have on hand as of the first of each year. I know that Ms. Wilkes and Ms. Irby have both gone through some of the issues and inequities that can occur due to that process of assessment, and have recommended, in conjunction with Ms. Wilkes, a plan for basically a revenue neutral level revenue solution to this, which would be switching retailers and wholesalers over to paying the BPOL tax, the business professional and occupational licensing tax. That tax would be set at 20 cents per 100 of gross receipts for retailers and 5 cents per 100 in gross receipts for wholesalers. The basic concept concept behind the beep hole tax is that it's a business license that actually ultimately grows out of the practice in Old England, that if you were going to set up shop at a municipal fair, or if you were going to set up a fair in Williamsburg during colonial times, you pay the tax based upon your receipts for having your stall at the market. Well, we still have that generalized concept. You pay a tax that in order to pay for the services that are making that market available to you. The other thing is that due to the fact that Ms. Irby found that there were a lot of gas stations that were selling huge quantities of fuel at basically no profit, it seemed as though it was more equitable from her perspective, and I think a lot of folks agreed, to have a subclass within retail of fuel sales where just the sales of fuel itself would be taxed at 8 cents per 100 in gross receipts. So if you have both a convenience store and fuel pumps, the convenience store is retail, so that's 20 cents per 100, but the fuel pumps are 8 cents per 100, just to make things a little bit more fair to people. As I went through the tax code, I also picked out a couple of things that were rather out of date, just changes to state code that I felt were important enough to try to pick up and clean up. One of which was to change the language of our tax exemption for certified pollution control equipment. The last time we updated this was almost 20 years ago. The state law has changed. Jane Irby has been following the state law because she has to, regardless of what our ordinance says. This is just bringing us into line, having the language line up with what state law requires and with what the commissioner is actually doing. There's a slight update to the procedure for refunding taxes erroneously paid, basically to involve county attorney review and having it go through the board appropriation process if the refund is larger than $2,500. This is an additional check and balance that, in my experience, auditors tend to very much like. Update the process of taxation of new structures substantially complete. Again, this is just complying with newer state code language that's come out since 2003. And finally, abolishing the communications utility consumer tax that we have. Used to be that you had a consumer utility tax on communications, one on natural gas, one on electricity, etc. And the one on communications was abolished in 2007 and replaced with the statewide communications sales and use tax, which covers not just telephone, but also cell phone, internet, cable TV, you name it, anything that's telecommunications. It's a flat 5% tax across all of that different stuff, which did away with our local tax. We get an allocation out of the CSUT from the state. In any event, took that section out since we aren't enforcing it anyway, and it can't be enforced at this point. I'm open to questions. There are details here that I haven't gone over, but those are the high points.
Thank you, Mr. Lockerbie, and we also want to thank Ms. Irby and all the staff that worked with you on this. You're right, it's been about a year in the making, so it's certainly been a long haul. Board members, are there any questions for Mr. Lockerbie?
Madam Chair, if I may, I suppose my question would be is to implement these changes, is this going to create a lot of work, or is this something Ms. Irby is prepared to do and they know all the ins and outs and details of everything that they need to do? Because it seems like it would be a big change, and maybe with the people that we are taxing, it might be different for them as well.
I think the concern is more for the people who are being taxed than for Ms. Irby, because she already charges beep-hole to most businesses. Mm-hmm. So for her, it's just going to be, it might actually simplify her processes to a degree.
It's just changing the rates in the system.
Yeah. So it will mean slightly different reporting requirements and returns that would have to be filed by businesses. But I do know that Ms. Irby has been very proactive about reaching out to people, but there's always going to be, that's how she knew about the fuel issue, was that she went out and beat the bushes and talked to people. There's going to be somebody who doesn't know and is going to be surprised in March when they get the first bill. You know that's going to be the case, that there's not much you can do about that, but I know that Ms. Irby and staff have done their due diligence. They've at least tried.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Lockerbie? All right, we will now open up the public hearing for revisions to Chapter 14. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Is there anyone here who is opposed? Anyone who would like to speak opposed? Seeing and hearing none, we will now close the public hearing and move on to decisions from the board.
Madam Chair, I move that the board adopt ordinance 2020-0010 as presented.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Ayers. We'll now move to item B, special exception request 2020-294 for Mr. Amdazi. Mr. Bryant.
Thank you. This is a request by Mr. Amazi for a special exception in the B2 General Commercial District. The purpose of this special exception is to allow for an automotive repair garage in the existing building. Many of you may know this is Pete's Garage. It's now A1 Auto Sales. The lot is currently used for the automobile sales, which will remain. The requester would like to use the garage doors that are underneath the existing office space for use. Staff was concerned about the ingress egress from those parking doors onto Highview Drive. The site distance is very limited. Staff's engaged with VDOT, and VDOT determined that they could issue a permit and be okay with things as long as there was no on-street parking along Highview Drive. So that's an additional condition I'm asking you to consider that was not part of the Planning Commission's recommendation, and there was an additional staff recommendation, which is also kind of bundled up in the recommended motion. Additionally, staff would like to address the concept of requiring sidewalks as part of the approval. The Amherst County Comprehensive Plan does address the desire to have sidewalks in Madison Heights. The comprehensive plan supports sidewalks when roads are being improved or designed and when new developments along Route 29 business are constructed. Staff supports the construction of sidewalks on Route 29 business. However, staff is also mindful of the efforts to be business friendly. The proposed use is to utilize an existing building with the reintroduction of the previously existing use and is not a new development. Therefore, staff does not believe that the applicant should be required to install approximately 680 feet of sidewalk along Route 29 business. I did spend some time speaking to VDOT staff about what construction costs could be. It's hard to get a detailed estimate right now, but it could be upwards of $30,000 to require sidewalks along the entire length of Route 29 business. I'm not going to read all the conditions, but again, I'm going to reiterate that staff does have an additional condition on top of the Planning Commission's condition, and that additional condition is that there will be no on-street parking or parallel parking allowed on Highview Drive. Recommended motion is that the Board of Supervisors approve the request with the conditions recommended by the Planning Commission and the additional condition recommended by staff. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Board members, any questions of Mr. Bryant? Thank you. All right, we will now open up the public hearing for special exception request 2020-294. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this request? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? All right, we need your name and your address, please.
Business address or home address?
Your home
Business
address.
address.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Hamidullah Ahmadzai. Home address is 83 Viking Drive, Landfill, Virginia 24522. Recently, I bought this place. I've been leasing for the past 3 years. I bought it, I think, in March. Yeah. So I was trying to use the garages. I'm using it's an auto sales for a car lot. So I do need the garages to repair my own cars, not customers' cars. When I buy them, if they have issues, I have to fix it in my own garage. So that's why I applied for the exemption. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor? Is there anyone here wishing to speak opposed? Anyone wishing to speak opposed? Seeing and hearing none, we will now close the public hearing. Board members, what's your pleasure?
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Supervisors approve the request with the conditions recommended by the Planning Commission and the additional condition recommended by staff.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Pugh. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Pugh. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now move on to special exception request 2020-315, Cash's Garage.
Thank you. The next request is by Cash's Garage for a special exception in the B2 General Commercial District. The purpose of this exception is to allow for an automotive repair garage in a vacant parcel. Many of you are familiar with Cash's Garage. They would like to expand their facility. They'd like to move across Lakeview Drive from where their existing facility is. They would be diagonally behind the Madison Heights Post Office and also between the post office and Wes's Muffler Shop. They would like to construct a new building that is approximately 9,100 square feet in total size. They would have a new entrance off of Lakeview Drive, and they would have parking on the side of the building. Staff had some concern initially about landscaping and the difference between commercial zoning and there is some residential zoning behind the parcel. To some extent, there's a vegetative buffer that wraps around the entire parcel. We're going to ask that vegetative buffer remain. There's also a difference a bit in topography from the residential dwellings that are here, about 10 to 15 feet. So we believe that the vegetative buffer that is existing is also adequate. Staff has a number of conditions that are part of this request as well, and Planning Commission did recommend approval. Recommended motion is the Board of Supervisors approve the request with the conditions recommended by the Planning Commission. Any questions?
Board members, any questions of Mr. Bryant?
Sure. Mr. Bryant, so the parking on the, I'll call it the left side, western side of the building, so that's for staff, correct?
I believe that's for staff and customers.
Okay, so where are vehicles that are going to be repaired, going to be kept?
Where they're going to be repaired? Well, they should be here as well. If they need to expand that, it needs to be in conformance with the site plan. There's approximately, looks like 6 spaces there now.
Right, so that's not going to take care of vehicles that are waiting to repair and staff vehicles.
Well, that's a great question. I know that some of that will come across. They have their other facility across the road. I would imagine they may use some of this rear area, but we have a condition that says that vehicles that are waiting repair need to be in a designated parking area that's in conformance with the site plan, and that they should be only on the lot for no more than 10 days. Mr. Brooks is here. We may even ask him to help address that question.
That'd be correct, yeah.
Mr. Martin,
Where do you
was your question answered sufficiently, or do you need Ms. Brooks?
It was not answered.
Okay.
Just bring up.
Ms. Brooks, would you like to come forward, please?
Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Thomas Brooks. I'm with Acres of Virginia Incorporated. We're located in Lynchburg, and we have an office out in Amherst as well. I'm here tonight representing Cash's Garage, which this property is under the name of MAC Lakeview LLC in regard to their special use request. The building itself is I noticed a concern that some had about parking. The building itself is such a large building that it's going to house some of the vehicles that they have on staff. That way they're able to keep the people's vehicles in the garage, so they're not subject to someone going out taking things off of them. They are still continuing to keep the piece across the road, and they will use that as parking as well. There's room enough to park some of the vehicles parallel right here on this paved parking in front of the building, and they have a concrete apron right there. And along this lane right here, they'll probably park some. Now, I can't say that they're not going to go over the grass area park. I can't tell you that. A lot of this site already is gravel itself, as you can see up towards the north of the property, the road. You can see that there is gravel there also. The parking, and I've been told that there's going to be probably 3 to 4 people on staff here working on the vehicles. There'll be an office space for one of the ladies that work there as well, plus the mechanics. And right now, I think they have about 3 people on staff working here. Majority of the time, the Wreck trucks are out on the road, they're pulling vehicles or they're towing vehicles and things of that nature. The site itself is pretty filled up with gravel, as you can see it now. There's a lot of vehicles being parked on that gravel. This used to be an old ball field, as I think most of us know. When we did the drain field, we had to go down 120 inches to get through the field dirt just so we could get a drain field in there. So it's pretty much field. We were surprised at the amount of field that's been placed in this piece of property over the years. And I've been in Amherst myself for 44 years. But this site has been like that. So we're not concerned with it going anywhere. It's going to stick around. And I don't know where all that field came from, but it was good field material. The road coming in there will be crossing over a gravel existing road. The parking that's going in is going to be over gravel existing. Really no grade change on this whatsoever. It's pretty flat and pretty even and ready to go. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Mr. Martin, did that answer your question?
Well, yes and no. I mean, you answered the question, but it continues my concern. So the condition, I believe, Mr. Bryant, where did you go, was that all the cars that were going to be on site being repaired would be in a designated parking space. There's 6 designated parking spaces, which we know are not going to be sufficient. And what Mr. Brooks just told us is that their problem might, he couldn't tell us they wouldn't be parked in the grass, that they wouldn't be parked along the road coming into the area, which that's my concern. So I would have hoped that we would have seen the storage area on the site plan so that we won't have vehicles. No, you stated that, Mr. Brooks. You said that.
We're making an assumption that they could be parking on the grass, Mr. Martin.
Okay, so.
That's an assumption on my part.
Okay, so 3 employees, 6 parking spaces. Are they gonna have more than 3 vehicles stored for repair? What are the parking requirements, Mr. Bryant?
When Mr. Cash came to us originally, we were under the impression, as Mr. Brooks said earlier, that part of this facility was used to store some of their larger vehicles. So we will, we were under the, well, as we're still reviewing the site plan, we were working towards understanding that some of this facility is for storage, some of it is for automotive repair. That's right. Okay.
And that existing gravel area is already there, so that's where they're parking larger vehicles, wreck trucks, things like that, some of the storage vehicles, plus on the other side of the road. So you've got quite a bit of area to the east of this property, to the south of the property, that is already existing gravel. And Mike mentioned that road behind there that Mr. Jeremy was talking about. That road is wooded. It's not open, probably never will be open because the terrain there is fairly steep. The grade coming through what's called South Oak Drive comes down to a house on the lower side, and then the rest of it is just nothing but woods, and it's a steep drop right there.
I mean, I'm tickled to death that an existing business in Amherst County is expanding. It's very, very important to me. Is it a requirement, Ms. Martin, this is your line of work as well, is it a requirement that you have to have a specified area for vehicles that you're working on? Or if you've got plenty of land and it's not an erosion issue, can you just use your lane?
I would say you would not be moving vehicles in and out of a grassy area by any means. My major concern is that we have a recommendation that for a condition that states all the vehicles will be in a parking space, but we only have 6 parking spaces shown, and you said in conformity with the site plan. Well, it's not in conformity with the site plan because you're not showing the parking space. I'm fine with everything if we have understanding that the vehicles are going to be in a designated parking area, which is either gravel or paved or whatever they want to make it, not in grass. And that they're not in the front, parked all the way up the driveway to Lakeview Drive. So if we can get that understanding, then my concerns go away.
Mr. Martin, that sounds like a reasonable request to me. Ms. Bryant, and is that doable?
We were talking to each other, not listening to you guys.
All right, Mr. Martin's concerns is that the vehicles are in a designated parking spot and if they're not in the grassy area. Ms. Martin, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Say it again, please.
So basically, that the vehicles would be in a designated parking area.
Well, I'll just put a note on the plan that states that no vehicles can be parked in this area. That's what we can do.
Well, you know, I don't also want to tie their hands. If they need to increase the area, they need to increase it, but it needs to be a paved area or a gravel area. And it should be probably beside the building and not parked all along the driveway up to the living driveway.
Is that, sounds like a reasonable request to me. Is that doable on your part? More than that, is it doable for the owner?
I have to deal with.
Right.
This area back in here is already gravel, and they are using that area. I don't know what the situation is with some of these vehicles can be parked. It's not like they have 1,000 cars parked here. They have a garage right now, and they service these vehicles during the day. They send them out of there as quick as they can get them in. That's the only way you can make money. They're not a major repair shop. They don't set and overhaul engines and overhaul transmissions like a lot of companies do. They're minor repair, get them out of there. And the ones that will be overnight, like if I had my vehicles maintenance there, I have equipment in them, and I don't want people breaking into them and stealing them. So they're gonna have them in the shop. And that's why they've got an 8-foot-long building here.
It's very clear. It says all vehicles waiting repair shall be in a designated parking area. That's in general components. That's what it says. Well, I'm gonna be able to comply with that.
I'm sure we can, yeah.
Madam Chair, just from listening to the parties, it sounds like there's already a large gravel area that's being used for parking. We don't want any parking outside of a designated gravel or paved area. Can you simply designate on the plan where the gravel area is and designate that's the parking area? It sounds like that's what you are looking for, Mr. Martin, that there be a designated parking area? And they need to designate that on the plan.
The gravel area is right here. It comes along here, down through here. We can designate this as the parking area, yes.
And that can be done the side or the rear, which is where the landscaping and buffer is.
Right, existing gravel there.
Fine, as long as we know that's where it's going.
Well, we can designate that, yes. We can designate that. Yeah, right, all of this can be designated as parking side. Yeah.
Any further questions?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Is that it for me?
It is.
Thank you.
All right, we will now open up the public hearing for special exception request 2020-315. Anyone here wishing to speak in favor? Is there anyone here wishing to speak opposed? Seeing and hearing none, we will now close the public hearing section. And board members, what's your pleasure?
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Supervisors approve the request for conditions recommended by the Planning Commission.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Garage, for doing business in Amherst County. We appreciate it.
All right, we will now move on to public hearing on refinancing of $8.5 million. Mr. There we go.
Yes, ma'am. I think what we're going to do, because we have two topics on the agenda with regard to the financing, kind of like Mr. Taylor to address the whole financing package now. We're required to do a public hearing with regard to the VPSA piece, but not with regard to the VRA piece. And it really only makes sense when you look at it all together. So I'd like you to go through all of that for the board, and then we can get on to the specific issues with regard to the VRA piece when we get to that portion of the agenda.
All right, are you ready?
Thanks,
Thank you.
With your permission, I'll remove my mask and speak with you. Thank you all for having me here this evening. Again, my name is R.T. Taylor. I'm with Davenport & Company. We serve as the county's financial advisor. I'll try to get closer to the mic here. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, you can probably pull it up a little bit. Yeah, tilt it
Might be out
up.
my technical expertise.
Thank you.
You have in front of you a book that looks very similar to the one we provided at the informational session at the last meeting. We did, based on the board's guidance, we added an additional scenario in there where we tried to move up some of the savings on one of the refunding candidates. So we'll get to that in just a minute, but want to go through this big picture. What we're here tonight presenting and asking for direction from the board on is to move forward potentially with refunding some existing county debt for cash flow savings. So you wouldn't be lengthening any of the existing debt. In some cases, you'd be shortening up the debt by a few years. You'd also be lowering the interest rates. And we would actually be issuing some bonds, some refunding bonds through the VRA state pool program in October, as well as the Virginia Public School Authority pool program that also prices in mid to late November. So with that said, I'd like to turn to page 1, and I'm looking at the bottom right-hand corner of the book for the page numbers to reference. You have 4 loans outstanding that we're currently identifying as refunding candidates or to be paid off early, okay? So the 2007 USDA RD loan is the one where we think it makes sense with its existing interest rate of 4 1/8. We could actually shorten that up several years and match the current, call it the current level of budgeted debt service for it, and actually shorten it up so much so that we could take off several years and save about $126,000 per year over the last remaining years. So we'll show that cash flow savings here shortly. That refunding candidate would be refunded potentially through the Virginia Resources Authority pool program. The 2016 lease that you did with US Bank, that was for some energy savings projects at the schools. That would actually be refinanced through the VPSA, or Virginia Public School Authority pool, that's set to price in mid to late October as well. The 2017 A bond, which was for the landfill project that has evolved, so the old sort of concept has gone away. That's the one that we would recommend based on guidance from the bond counsel and your county attorney. In all of our discussions, you've got some bond proceeds remaining from that financing that could be used to just pay that off early. You would be taking out higher interest rate debt from that project, repurpose and reissue your new projects for the transfer station and convenience center, and get newer, lower rates and have a new pot of money, if you will. And that would be the most efficient way to sort of get going on your new money projects related to the transfer station and convenience center. So again, that 2017 A bond would be paid off in full based on the money you already have in your at your disposal. The 2017 B bonds, that would be used to or be refunded through the Virginia Resource Authority program. That is secured by the county building here. As part of the overall refinancing and financing package through VRA, they require up to 75% collateral, or excuse me, a minimum of 75% collateral on the stuff that you'll be refunding and issuing new debt for. So that's sort of the big picture, how those refunding candidates are being looked at, and it ties into the potential new money piece as well.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes,
while you're going over that, on line 18, line 17 shows your true interest cost.
Oh, wait, which page?
On page 4.
Okay. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I was just going down page 1, I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry too, I was just looking at it says all in TIC.
Yes, sir.
What is that?
So that's the equivalent if you were to finance a home. Your interest rate from the bank might be 5%. but the effective rate, the APR, I think everybody's familiar with that term. The APR would factor in all the costs associated with the financing.
So TIC is true interest cost.
Yeah, true interest cost is it's a present value of the bonds you have to issue, present value back that cash flow with just, let's say, the underwriter's discount. That's just the base level calculation. If you fold in PRA cost, their advisors, their counsel, local costs, meaning your attorney, your bond counsel, and
So that's your true cost?
It's
After all that is?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so up here under your coupon, item 5, it's at 4.125%. That is your true cost, right?
So that is when you're looking at the 2007 USDA loan.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, what you're paying to USDA is 4.125%, and we're talking about refinancing at 2% or less.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So you're comparing essentially line 5 to lines 17 and 18.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I think we can stay here on this page because the first couple pages really just reiterate what I've already sort of laid out, big picture on the front of this. Page 4 is the scenario where we were asked at the last meeting to come back and say, can we pull some of these savings up front to maybe either use toward existing projects or given the current environment, maybe it gives us a little bit of flexibility from a cash flow perspective in our budget. The alternative is we want to squirrel away a little bit more money in our fund balance. So what we did was on, with respect to the 2017 Bs and the 2016 lease through VPSA, we tried to get the savings upfront into fiscal year 22. Okay, so we pulled a little bit more savings up front in that scenario. If you turn the page, just hold your finger there and flip the page, the 2017 Bs in the middle of the page, they were yielding about $20,000 on average savings. Okay, the 16s were yielding about $42,000 in savings. In the total, at the bottom there, the 17 Bs yielded $111,000, and the 16 saved you $452,000. So if you flip back to page 4, we pulled those dollars up. You're saving essentially the same amount of money, $111,000 on one, $440 on the other. But you can see at fiscal year 22 on the matrix on the right, we pulled up roughly $124,000 just up in fiscal year 22. So that was a scenario that we were asked to run at the last meeting. That's going to be up to y'all's guidance and working through staff to let us know ultimately how you want to do that as we get closer to pricing. It's not something that you need to identify or solve or adopt in the resolution this evening. Okay, that's not a parameter necessary to hem ourselves in as we move. We can work through that process a little bit. So again, let me just step back on let's flip to the level savings page on page 5. And I'm just going to step through the chart on the left just to reacclimate here. The 2007 USDA loan has 1.8 million outstanding. That's on line 2 of the matrix on the left. It has an interest rate of 4.125% currently, and it goes out to 2043. If you keep following down the page, we're actually looking at issuing less bonds in the current market. So instead of having 1.8 outstanding, we are estimating roughly 1.5 million. And that's again because the investors right now are willing to pay you a premium or pay VRA a premium to buy a higher rate, like call it a 5% coupon, on your bonds. And that effectively drives your yield, your interest rate down because yields are lower than that coupon. So they're giving you a premium. That's why you can issue less bonds to take out higher bonds. And your interest rate would go from 4.125 down to roughly 2%. So with that in mind, for that column, and let me touch on this before I move from the USDA loan. On line 22, over the life of the loan, on the refunding, if you were to compare the old stream of debt service to the new stream of debt service, you'd save approximately $633,000. So if you hold your finger on that USDA column and put your finger on the other matrix to the right, you can see that you're essentially break even. What we've done is solve for break even between fiscal years 21 through 2038. Keep in mind your old debt retires in 43. We've cut off several years of debt, and all your savings are really on the back end, $126,000 a year that you've paid it off early. So after walking through that example, you can actually track the 2017 Bs the same way. On the left-hand side, you have $3.5 million outstanding up on line 2. It's currently at a 2.32%. Because it only goes out to 2027, it's a shorter loan, so your effective interest rate down on 18 is 1.15%. So cut it in half. And your estimated savings is roughly $111,000 over the life of the refund. And it saves you on average roughly $20,000 a year. So those are the two loans that would potentially be refunded through the VRA pool. The next one, the 2016 lease with US Bank, currently has $7.7 million outstanding, and that was for some energy savings for the schools. There is an existing interest rate of 2.19%. It matures in 2030, and we are going to match that 2030. So we're going to keep the same final maturity, and the estimated rate is roughly 1%. So again, we're not extending any debt. We're actually shortening up a couple components, and we're getting lower interest rates. That's the goal. And then lastly, like we talked about a little bit ago, the 2017 A bonds that were issued for the new landfill cell project, that is not going forward. Rather, the project evolved into the transfer stations and convenience centers. So we've got a pot of money that we can simply use to take out the older, higher interest rate debt, issue the new bonds through the VRA program this fall, and continue forward with the transfer station and convenience centers. And then lastly, wanted to point out the right-hand column over here, estimated cash flow savings. So after refunding debt for lower interest rates and paying off some existing debt with bond monies that are already in the county's possession in a project fund, you would free up roughly $380,000, $390,000 over the next, call it 12 to 13 years.
Where is that number?
I'm on page 5 on the far right-hand column. So after you refund the 2007 USDA loan, the 2017 Bs, the 2016 refunding, and then pay off the old 17 As, you're effectively pulling out and freeing up $380,000, $390,000 a year over the next decade plus. And the question becomes how to utilize that those freed up monies toward that potential transfer station / convenience center project financing.
So, and that's, we took out a loan of around $3.9 million for the landfill. Originally, it was 3.979, anyway, 3.9 million.
Yes, sir.
And we currently have 3.318 to pay off, is that correct? On line one, bonds refunded, pay off?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Dean, we've already spent that other amount of money in there. I forget the exact amount, but it's, it was 3.9, way out of 3.3, so about $600,000. Has been spent out of that loan to?
Yeah, we have.
But that's for payments. We have
Yeah,
to
we've been
pay the
making
debt,
payments on
no
the
matter
loan.
what.
You know, we haven't started construction yet. That's going to start in the coming week. But we've been paying it down because we've had it for 3 years now.
Well, it's required when we borrowed it.
I was just wondering, what if you had spent, $600,000 on anything, or we just paid it down?
We paid it down. We have spent some on
Engineering fees, I would assume?
engineering fees
About
and on the
$200,000
Dodge
on that.
store, some.
I haven't fully
You didn't use that
done
for Dodge store?
Not yet. We did some equipment. There's some
Yeah,
equipment.
the
that we
compactor.
purchased.
You could look that up and tell us, you don't have to do that right away.
Right, we can find out what that went toward.
I was just wondering.
But I think that what they're getting at though is that 400,000 of that 600,000 gap was actually just taking the money that we had borrowed and paying it back to the bank in basically making payments for it.
So at this point, we're really only halfway through, because what we've done is we've taken our transfer station money and we've given it back to the bank.
So you gotta take a loan out to.
We gotta get a loan now to build the transfer station and Boxwood Farm. So that's the next step of this presentation.
And I think it's important to note that, number one, that loan currently has a 2.57% on it, the one that's already in place, 2.57%.
The one we're gonna pay off.
The one you're gonna pay off. So there's two notes here. The one is the higher interest rate. We are looking at current rates that are much lower than that, right? The other part of it is that money, based on legal counsel's guidance from the old financing, it would be more efficient to use that money legally to get that, to pay off the old bonds before we issue the new bonds. So that's the important part. Okay, if we're good on this part, we'll move to the new money part, okay? Oh, before I do, I apologize. Page 6. This is related to setting our parameters for the refunding for VRA. You'll notice in your resolution tonight, we've got a few parameters laid out with respect to not exceed par amounts, not to exceed interest rates to provide flexibility, and then the minimum net present value, where we've been talking about the 5 and 10% savings. We want to set a parameter low enough to give us flexibility, but not so low necessarily that we don't really accomplish our goals of cash flow savings. So you'll see that here in a little bit. Same thing on page 7, that's specific to the BPSA financing. So we're looking at setting a minimum threshold of 3% in the aggregate. On page 9, this goes into what do we do, how can that $390,000 per year freed up, how can that help us afford that transfer station and convenience center project? Whether the right number is $5 million or $6 million or somewhere thereabouts, we have the parameter in the resolution tonight up to $6 million. It would be up to y'all to determine if that's the right number If it needs to come down, it can also come down from that based on guidance from the board and from staff up until pricing of the bonds October 28th. VRA will probably want to know a couple of weeks ahead of that what the final number is, but you have the flexibility provided for in the resolution tonight up to $6 million. So what does that look like over 10 years, 15 years, and 20-year amortizations? Bless you. If you turn the page to page 10, this is the 10-year amortization. You can see where in the middle column, I'm going to start on the left-hand side of the page under the $5 million project. If you look under scenario 2 level savings, that's going to tie back to that other page we looked at just a little bit ago, where it's about $385,000, $390,000 a year that's freed up. And if we try to amortize the $5 million over a 10-year span, we can offset it mostly by that $385,000, $390,000 a year. There's a little bit over by about $140,000 a year by trying to shorten it up to 10 years. I think the useful life is longer than that, but we were asked to run 10, 15, and 20 years to provide this perspective to see what your desire would be, what staff recommends, with how quickly or how to extend that out to match the useful life of the assets being funded. On the $6 million project on the right-hand side, the same setup. You've got your new money being amortized over 10 years in the first column. That's $626,000 a year. You've got the savings of $380,000, $390,000 to offset it. So it would be roughly $240,000 over and above your current budget. If you flip the page, this is where we said, okay, we'll amortize it over 15 years. Okay. The debt service, again, on the left-hand side for $5 million over 15 years at current rates would be roughly $380,000 a year, which that's what we just freed up. So it's almost a break-even scenario for the $5 million project fund. That's reflected there in the net impact to cash flows column. Any questions on that? On the right-hand side for $6 million over 15 years, your debt service would be roughly $450,000, and that's almost completely set off too by those savings we just freed up from doing the refundings and the payoff of the old bonds, to the tune of roughly $60,000, $70,000, slightly above current budget. If we take it one step further on the next page and look at 20 years, and one could argue maybe we split the difference and go 17 or 18 years, we have the flexibility built within the resolution for your consideration tonight that we could dial it back from 20 years to 18 or 17, whatever makes sense when we're leading up and getting closer to the actual pricing date. Based on what rates are doing, we can try to hone in on a tighter amortization. But for the 20-year amortization, $5 million on the left-hand side, the debt service would be roughly $300,000, $310,000 a year. The savings offset more than that. So you actually have some freed up budget still remaining to the tune of about $70,000 a year for the next several years. And then on the $6 million side, you have a slight cushion, if you will, based on current budget levels over the next several years to the tune of about $10,000 to $17,000. It just will depend on how rates evolve over the next month or so. But we believe we have resolutions this evening that set up flexible enough parameters that you can direct the chair, the vice chair, and staff to proceed and be able to obtain and achieve the desired results for the refinancings and the new money, should you want to move forward. Any questions, I'm happy to answer. I know I've been doing a lot of talking, so.
So I have a question. There's about 12 or 13 years left on the current bond, the 2007A. That's supposed to mature in 2032, correct? Yeah.
Let me just turn back to
Yeah,
the page.
yeah, I think that's right. I think it's
That's
12.
right, 8132, correct.
Okay. And then there's three different scenarios, a 10, 15, and 20-year scenario on the new debt we'd be taking out, whether it's 5 million, 6 million, whatever it is.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And so one thought though on the other project and why the financing was set to mature in 2032, I think the useful life of the cell that was contemplated is shorter than the assets being financed through the new money. So when you're trying to refinance, or excuse me, when you're trying to finance a project, the typical guidance is to try to match the financing to the life of the asset, the useful life. Because the point is, you don't want to be paying on something, 10 years after it's completed. After you fill up the landfill cell, you don't want to have to keep paying on it. In this particular case, the transfer station and the convenience center are set up to have a longer useful life. So it's back to accounting on this with the matching principle. You're matching the payment of the life over the life of that asset. You're matching the expenses to that one. That's why we've shown all three of those to give you some perspective. But I think at the end of the day, it could be somewhere between 15 and 20 years.
Mr. Rogers, I have a question. When we allocated the money to build the transfer station, it came partly from savings of closing the landfill, and then we also had a loan. We borrowed money to do that. Do we still have enough money to do that, or do we have to have the savings in order to do that?
No, ma'am, we have enough to do it.
Okay, that's all I
We're just
wanted
trying
know.
to take advantage of the interest rates that are out there.
Okay.
Can I give you a little, I wrote some information down way back. We took a loan out for 3.9 million. We had a landfill reserve of 4.4 million. I guess that's still intact, I'm not for sure. The transfer station, I don't know what the latest projected cost, but that was roughly 1.7 million. It may be more than that, I'm not for sure. Cell one closure cost was supposed to be around 2.2 million. We were gonna use around 860,000 of reserve fund for landfill equipment. And we're gonna use around 3.5 million of the reserve fund for post-closure expenses. I assume that's all still.
Except, we purchased the landfill equipment. We have the compactor, we have the excavator, we have the dump truck.
So you used all 800, I just haven't seen it, I don't know what we bought, I know that this was the plan, so I wanted to make sure we're following the plan we have.
Stacy
The items that we
can
need.
give you an update here on.
Because one of the additional reasons to take out the money is to get more equipment, so to speak, that's what,
Right, and so when we're done here, the question that you presented last time is, so what are you gonna do with the money, this extra money that we can borrow? And then we'll have Mr. Thacker come up and go through what we propose to do with that money and why that's good, why that will save us even more money if we can get this additional equipment and facilities.
So first of all, your reserve now has 4.635 in it. The transfer station in Boxwood Farm and Poolwell contract, I believe is about 2.9. We still have plenty of money to do that. I can tell you that we have a lot of equipment now that is needed if we do go forward with the convenience centers. So that's what we're looking at, as opposed to cash funding it, we can debt fund it. So just tell me what you want to know and I'll try to find it on here. I'm kind of jumping real quick.
You answered my question.
yeah, we can discuss this in a little more detail later on. I know we're kind of working our way up to this.
Any further questions? No? Ms. Martin, sure you're looking pondering?
All right, so, I think you could get numbers out. So there's like 3.9 that's left to pay back.
No, the original loan was for $3,979 and roughly.
Original one.
Yeah. And the payoff is 3.3.
So we've got 2.9 million to pay off to build pool well and Boxwood Farm.
There's some small stuff at Coolwell.
There's some extra pads.
We have some extra pads and a few things to do to bring it up to the capacity it needs to be. Right, maybe.
And the transfer center is 1.7-ish.
No, it's two something.
2.1, as I recall.
I'm
I'm
trying
not
to
that
find it
great
now.
math, but
I sent the contract.
2.9 and 2 point something is more than 3.9. So where is that other money coming from? Or where-
No, I think 2.9 is everything, I believe. So it's maybe just,
Yeah, all three
I just
locations.
gotta find it. I sent it to our team.
Yeah, I mean, the transfer station was 1.7, and then I guess some of the other expenses was building Boxwood Farm, which I don't know what that's gonna cost. The last one we built, it was supposed to cost, around 600,000 or so.
770.
Well, that's because we built it in the floodplain, and then we're going back and paving the lot, so we're looking at around $900,000 on that property. But this one shouldn't be as expensive.
That's right, and that is built into the not to exceed price that Price Billing has already given us. I mean, that contract's in place, that's ready to go. That number won't be exceeded.
So what I'm hearing is right now we have enough money to do the projects that we said we were going to do, yet refinancing this gives us the ability to lower our debt service, which is essentially our payment, right? But it also gives us the ability to borrow more money to do additional projects, right?
And still lower our debt
And
service.
still lower our debt service. I think where I'm interested in having the discussion is making sure the board's priorities are the same as staff's. We're letting staff.
Absolutely.
So can I also tell you one thing? This will also keep us from having to use the savings in the reserve for the equipment that's needed for these additional projects. I just wanted, we had originally planned to use some of that reserve to do some of that in the early stages. We wouldn't have to do that now.
Okay.
Any further questions? Good? All right, thank you very much. We will now go to the public hearing portion of this, which will only be for the Virginia Public School Authority, VPSA, general obligation debt, because we are obligated by law to do this. So we will now open up the public hearing. If anyone here wishing to speak in favor of. Is there anyone here wishing to speak opposed? We will now close the public hearing on the refinancing of the VPSA bonds. Mr. Lockaby, when we make a motion, is it only for action on the VPSA part?
That's right. It's just on the refinancing of the money that we currently have, I believe, US Bank for the performance improvements to the schools, as well as the refinancing of, I think, earlier debt for the schools. Is that right, RT?
The 2016 was all new money related to the energy savings.
So it's all for the energy savings work.
Yeah, well, the recommended motion in our pack is pretty straightforward. Let's just make sure that it was clear for the public. Board members, any questions? Ready for a motion?
Madam Chair, will this board approve the VPSA refinancing resolution?
Motion on the floor by Ms. Moore. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Moore. Thank you very much for explaining that. It was complicated. All right, we'll now move on to the consent agenda. There's a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion on the floor by Ms. Moore. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The consent agenda is now approved, and we will move on to the lease financing for BRA.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so at this point now, what we would like to do, because now we're talking about the new money that we need to, assuming we pay back the loans for the landfill, the new Selma landfill, and the new transfer station. Now we need money for the transfer station. And, that's about 4 million. And then we would like you to consider an additional 1 million and an additional 2 million. The staff recommendations that we go for 2 because it lowers our debt service. And because we get the lower interest rate, and because we don't have to draw on the reserves. So what I would like to do is ask Mr. Thacker to come up and draw your, yes, please. And I want to draw your attention to the chart. It's the blue, yellow, and green chart in your package. That's an attachment, and it is entitled, there. I'm going to try to put that on the screen for you. That's the second attachment, waste system list of projects. So this is what we would propose to do with that additional money.
Mr. Rogers, can you clarify that? Because if I'm having a hard time following it, and I'm kind of supposed to know what's going on, people who are watching or people in the audience, I want to make sure that they understand. Is this in addition to the extra monies we just talked about, or is this part of that same money?
It's part of the same package that Mr. Taylor just explained, okay? And all you did in your last motion was you just took the school portion of that and took care of that. Now we're still back to the same discussion, same money. And the question is, do we seek financing for $4, $5, or $6 million? All right, now we need the 4 to pay for what we've already contracted for, which is the transfer station, Boxwood Farm, and so forth. But we believe that we can leverage the additional $2 million and save even more operational costs by taking on additional responsibilities and improving our efficiencies. So with that, roughly, the blue list is for $5 million, and the yellow list takes us to $6 million, and the green is, if there's any money left over, that's the order of projects we would like to also apply funding to. Because all of our numbers are estimates, and they're all rounded up. So they're conservative. We really expect to come in when we go out to bid on these things, or to get actual costs to come in under these totals, which would allow us to dip down into the green projects.
Board members, I apologize for being thick-headed, but every time you say we need $4.5 million for the transfer station, it goes back to my question a while ago. Don't we already have that money? Don't we already have that money for the transfer station?
We're paying that money back. We're paying that loan off. So we're taking that money that we borrowed to build the transfer station, and we're giving it back to the bank. Now we don't have any money.
And we've already.
And the reason we're giving it back is because of high interest rate. And we can go get a better loan. So we need to go do that. And so I'm assuming, as we talk, that you want to go forward and finish the transfer station, we get a $4 million loan. The question then is, we want to get a $5 million loan or a $6 million loan, because the money's so cheap.
Yeah, thank you.
I just have a question. It was my understanding we were going to spend $862,000 out of the reserve fund for equipment at the transfer station. And I see a lot of equipment here that is for the transfer station. I was under the impression would be included in this $862,000.
Well, yes, yeah, we don't have to now. In other words, that was going to come out of our cash reserves.
Haven't you already bought it?
Pardon?
Haven't you already bought it?
Some of it we have, but Brian will explain one of them is a loader that we're using at the transfer station that's designed for the transfer station to push the trash into the trucks. We're not going to be using the compactor. We're not going to be using the articulated dump truck. We're not gonna be using the loader that's there on top of the landfill. It's different equipment. So there's a period of time here when we're actually operating a landfill while we've got the transfer station under construction and then operational, because we'll still be putting trash in the landfill to finish it off and cap it off. And then we'll be able to dispose of that equipment.
Madam Chair, Ms. Wilkes, of that $800-some thousand, how much have we spent of that? Roughly?
Of the savings?
That the $862,000, I believe it was, Mr. Pugh mentioned, that was going to come out of cash savings to go toward that program. How much, and that listed some equipment that would be purchased out of that. How much of that have we?
I don't think any. What equipment we have.
So you're saying if we borrow this money, then that money will be left and then we will not utilize any of that cash?
Correct. What we have bought.
We would not use any of the 862 or what's left of it?
We would not use any of the 862. We haven't, any equipment that we've bought, I've been able to, I have drawn that down off of the original 4 million.
Okay.
So the 3.3 million that's left, that's 600 or so. We've used that money, and that $4.6 million that we have sitting over in the reserve is gonna stay there to do the closing, but we should not need it for anything else. If we do the $6 million, we should not need that 4.6 that's in the reserve for anything else.
You're still have to close the land.
Correct, but the closing, so the 4.6 covers closing and post-closure care. So it's not all going to be used for closure.
And in the Draper rate study, if you look at it, it was estimated to be I believe 3.5 million from the reserve fund for post-closure and closure expenses, I believe.
Yes, but that is for, we fund that annually based on the amount of space that is taken up, and it will depend on how much airspace is taken up at the end of, when they finally cap it.
So it's an estimate.
Yeah, and actually the other landfill is also included in that. And I may go at some point, Brian and I want to talk about, I've seen it done before when you get close to the end to ask DEQ to reduce that because you're so close to the end of the 30 years. We're still carrying it for both of them. So we have to be close as go with the years.
That's a new wrench.
Yeah, so it's kind of there just for the in case. It's just the in case money, in case something goes wrong after you close it.
Yeah, I understand that. The Draper Agent study was pretty, it took a while to get that together and to do that. I forget her, Lynn Clavick. She spent a lot of time on that, and this board was sold on the transfer station based upon these numbers, not necessarily on everything. That was one of the big caveats, was the savings and how we would fund it. There was also supposed to be an estimated $246,000 per year savings by going to the transfer station. There's a lot of money, we don't know that yet. We can't say that's the estimate.
Right.
That
was the estimate 3 years ago.
So that's one of my concerns, is the operating expense for the transfer station. We have a guess. I mean, we think it's accurate, but we don't know quite yet. We've seen a 20% increase in the amount of tonnage in our landfill this year. So that could have a problem with fuel, hauling, etc. So.
I can answer some of those questions, Mr. Pugh.
Yeah, but what I don't think we want to do, I mean, we made a decision, we don't want to keep looking back and, we certainly don't want to add any more time to this.
Yeah, I know. I also have a timeline of what we were supposed to do as far as when the transfer station was built too. Maybe we can get an update on that as well. So.
All right, let's get our agenda, Mr. Thacker.
I'm here at your pleasure. What can I answer for you? For Mr. Pugh's first question, we did get clearance from VDOT last week. And we're told within 10 to 14 days we should start construction of both Boxwood Farms and the transfer station. The Transfer station is about 1 year from the time the first tree falls, we get a certificate of completion. Boxwood Farms is approximately March.
We completed in March.
Yes, ma'am.
So, just to address your concern, which is there are operational expenses. We do not know what they will be. Of course, they're gonna go up over time. That's just what the cost of things does. And so that's what we looked at with regard to this additional $2 million. How might we take over operations or run our operations in a way that reduces our cost? So on the list of projects, you'll see a lot of compactors. And the reason for so many is we'd be replacing our smaller compactors with larger compactors. And the objective, of course, is to get more weight into each container so that when we send a truck to pick it up, we're hauling more waste, which means we send the truck fewer trips to get just as much waste. So that keeps our fuel costs down and more costs and other things. So we're trying to become more efficient. And that's what, Brian can answer any of your questions about how these things on the blue list will make us more efficient, and then yellow and green and so forth.
So, Mr. Thacker, as I understand it, this exercise came from you looking to see if we could be more efficient and save money if we did everything in-house instead of contracting it out.
Yes, ma'am. We've done some preliminary estimates by calling contractors and using those estimates and then using our own internal cost per mile and our expenses that we've incurred over the past few years. We've determined we can do it for less than half the price, which is the same evaluation we came up with when hauling the convenience sites, which is what I brought to you early in the spring.
So, can you bring some hard numbers back to us on the savings that you've done from hauling versus what we had?
Yes, ready.
Okay, so we did query Thompson Trucking, who is in the process.
No, I'm talking about when County Waste was hauling from the convenience centers to the landfill, where now we are using our own people, our own equipment to haul from the convenience sites to the landfill. That is the numbers I would like to see, how, if we are hitting the targets.
Mr. Harris asked for a report after 6 months. That would be January 1st. I can bring it to you next month if you prefer, but I was waiting for a 6-month period to bring that to you. Which would you prefer?
And we just started that in July.
Well, it would be nice to get, before we go whole hog and decide to,
I can give you some preliminary numbers, but we're paying County Waste approximately $12,000 a month to haul our convenience sites. Those are post green box sites. I'm not including those. Those are the 24-hour convenience sites. It's about $12,000 a month. We're now paying 2 drivers to do it. And their salary is.
But plus the equipment, so we had to make the investment in the equipment.
We did invest in the equipment. We did invest in 1 truck. And so we already had the containers, we already had everything else lined up.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Martin?
Again, I have refinancing the debt, lowering the debt service, giving us ability to borrow more money to do more things at the landfill. Absolutely no problem. Okay, makes perfect sense. What I do have an issue with is saying, okay, I think we got this on Thursday, maybe Friday at the best, whenever it was posted, right? This is how we're gonna spend that $2 million, right? And I think there's a lot of debate that may go into that. Me, personally, I'd be interested in seeing more convenience centers built, where they're actually convenient to people. And I'd like to see the days extended at the convenience centers, where we're doing things that are more convenient for our citizens instead of our staff and us, all right? That's what I'd like to talk about. So, as far as refinancing, fine. Where we actually put the money, I think deserves more debate.
Well,
So if we have to decide tonight, I'm not prepared on deciding where it goes.
the money, the amount is on the thing.
Wait a minute, when do we have to give you direction on that?
When do we need an answer on that?
Oh,
It's just the amount.
What?
I'm getting it from RT.
On the amounts.
When do you need?
so
there's a couple things, couple deadlines.
At the microphone, please, because we're broadcasting on YouTube.
I got you.
That's how they pick you up.
So for letting VRA know if you're committed to participating in the pool for the couple refundings, the 07s and the 17Bs, as well as any new money piece, that they need to know that, and the county would have to deliver a bond sale agreement executed by September 25th. Okay. The amount, we have some more flexibility with when we can convey to them what the final amount is, and that would be roughly mid-October, right before they go out to the bond markets to market their bonds with their preliminary official statement.
And they don't care what we use the money for, as long as it's within the same family of, or do they need to know what we're gonna use it for?
So you would be defining what you're using it for, and letting them know, and you're within those parameters, what you've told them you're gonna use it for. You couldn't say, let's fund a transfer station and then or a convenience center, and then turn around and fund, I don't know, another county project. I mean, it's got to.
As long as we say we're gonna use it for waste, some type of waste management.
Solid waste.
Solid waste, okay.
And I would also ask Mike to weigh in just to make sure, because I'm not an attorney, I think we're within the parameters and VRA's parameters for the use of these funds with what we're talking about this evening.
It's within yes, this is all within what I believe VRA would be fine with, especially if we told them now. It's if you get down the road after having done the bond issue and you want to change, that it's an issue. And another important thing to note, we were talking, for instance, with the $4 million that we borrowed 4 years ago now, 3.5 years ago, we were initially looking at doing landfill work. And if we had decided to change the acreage or the design, or we were gonna move from a grass cap to a membrane cap or whatever, that all would have been within the project. But when we changed from being a landfill, opening a new cell, to building a transfer station, that was just too big. That was too big of a change. We needed to amend the bond agreement. So, which is part of why we're here talking about refunding that bond. So I just want to clarify, this stuff is all within the scope of doing the transfer station and convenience center project. But if you move to a different model, then you might have a problem.
So to get back to the question at hand, what do you have to do tonight? You need to know, we need to let VRA know by the 22nd, today's the 15th. We have to let them know by the 22nd, the amount that we seek. We're seeking money.
No.
Is that what you said?
We have to execute and deliver to them the bond sale agreement by the 25th. They would like to know the amount the week of the 21st. However.
Of September?
Yes.
Well, this is our last
No,
meeting.
I'm saying though, they would like to know going into that process. They are flexible and amenable to adjusting it. If they know what they're not gonna want is you tell them you want 6 million and then end up asking for 7 or 8 million. We can always come down under. So that's the way the resolution is set up this evening, so that you're approving parameters, again, to be flexible, such that you can communicate and direct, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but the documents, the resolution points to authorizing the chair, vice chair, and the county administrator to making the final calls leading up to finalizing that amount and finalizing what the parameters are for the savings on the refunds.
So board members, if the upper limit was 6 of what we talked about tonight. So if we say 6, then we can always, after discussion, say, no, we're not comfortable with 6 and go down to 4 or 5 or whatever. But the only thing we need tonight is a number.
We do need to pass that bond resolution one way or the other tonight. And if you go 4 million, 5 million, 6 million, no legal issue. But if we are going to do the refinancing, you got to either pass it tonight or hold a special meeting within the next 7 days.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, I'm fine with the refinancing. I'm fine with setting it at 6. The upper limit, what I'm not fine with is saying this is exactly what we're going to spend the extra $2 million on.
No, I don't disagree with you at all. I think that requires some conversation.
I'm not okay with that.
Right, that's where we are.
Right,
So if we can set the
however.
upper limit, we're good. I would still, mean, you just asked at the last meeting, what would you spend the money on? So I'd like Ryan to explain each of these items, so at least it's in your head, and then you can give us more questions and we can bring you back more detail.
You can't blame him for doing what we asked. I just
That's right.
Don't like what he put forth, so that's fine. He did what he told, what we asked him to. So, yeah, I think it's pretty self-explanatory what they are, but again, my interest is making things actually more convenient for the citizens. If we're gonna follow that.
And of course, we do have another convenience center on. We have one. That's a debate the board needs to have, because I do know that there is not agreement as to how many more you want to build. And so that's why we put one on here, because I think there's consensus for one, but I'm not sure there's consensus for two.
So if we go through and we do this, when would the money actually become available?
They closed November 18th. The pool, the VRA pool closes on November 18th. And that's when your monies would go into a Virginia state program called SNAP, State Non-Arbitrage Program. That's where we anticipate those funds being deposited. And they're available to you at that point on, and it's completely liquid. It's in money market investments with the state program.
And we just draw it down as we need it.
That's correct.
With documentation.
Right.
We have to spend it.
And I'll echo Mr. Martin saying, I think that's what we should do, is make it more convenient for our citizens. I utilize Cool Well quite often, and that place is very busy, very busy. And it probably would help if we had another place somewhere in Madison Heights that people could use.
Madam Chair, I think the board's probably prepared to do the motion to go ahead with the 6, but I'm in agreement too. We need to have more detailed conversation, just like expanding or adding to the Cool Well. If we're going to build another convenience center for the south, say just use Riverview, we probably need to look, do we need to do that? Expend this extra money at Cool Well, because we obviously know if we build one further south, it's going to take some of the pressure off the Cool Well side. So I think all of this needs to be discussed and talked about, probably in length, not here tonight, but I think we're prepared here to make a resolution on the resolutions that's needed to let Mr. Taylor move forward. And then we can decide exactly how much and how it will be spent at a later time.
And I'm fine with that. And we can do this, Mr. Thacker's thing later or after this. But I know how I feel when I'm prepared to give a presentation and I've worked on it and I come in and I say, oh, never mind, we'll do it later. I would like to hear what this man has put together. Even if it's 5 minutes of it, I would like to give him the respect to hear that. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay. All right, let's get it. Do we need a question for Mr.?
Yeah, so November is about the time the money becomes available. Is there any set time that you have to start spending it? Because January 1, it sounds like we have 6 months worth of data on some things that might aid us into making some decisions on some of this stuff.
Yes, so there are certain spin down requirements, and I would defer really to Mike on that. I mean, within the first 6 months, you have to spin down, what is it, 5%?
I think, you're supposed to spend down, I believe it's 5 or 10% in the first 6 months. You must spend it down 85% within 3 years. So you can't let the grass grow under your feet.
Yeah, I get that. I think there's ways to do that, especially.
I don't think we're gonna have a problem with that because the station is already starting.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, who's gonna give us a motion? I'm sorry? I was gonna do the motion and let him speak, but, wait.
That works.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
Finally, I'll make it. I move the board adopt resolution 2020-0023-R and direct the county administrator to execute the documents necessary to implement the resolution. Fair enough?
Motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Thacker.
Didn't have a great presentation in mind. I just want to go line by line. If you have questions, stop and yell. Most important item here is a new truck shop. We don't have any facility right now to work on our equipment throughout the county. Part of this would be a credit from the builder, and part of this we have in savings, and part of it would come from this fund. And this would allow us to work on not only transfer station equipment, heavy equipment, but our trucks and our containers, just basic tasks like changing a tire we can't do unless you do it on a landfill face or gravel. Second item, A2.
And Brian, what do we pay Caterpillar to come change?
About $125 an hour minimum, plus about $3.50 a mile. And oil change just cost us $1,200 for a piece of landfill.
Like a fire truck.
Second item is the loader that we mentioned earlier. For the transfer station, we don't have an existing piece of equipment that can do what that needs to be done. Third item are stationary trash cans and compactors like we have at the landfills. This would be additional slabs, additional compactors. Work barn is a good example where we had a compactor go down and we don't have a backup. We had to commingle cardboard and trash, thereby negating the recycling we should be doing. Several of our sites had the ability to have additional 40 yards. We'd like to put those in there.
A question real quick.
Sir?
So we have compactors now, correct?
Yes, sir.
So would you wait until the life of those compactors quit, or would you pull those out and replace them?
We do neither. We would add to them. So for instance, Work Barn has one trash compactor. We would add a second one.
Mm-hmm.
So if one goes down, we have a backup. And we don't have to use the cardboard container and contaminate our potential recycling funds.
Well, I heard this is just strictly cardboard. Because there was a suggestion earlier that we were going to use larger compactors and larger trailers, all additional larger loads.
Look further down on the list.
A5 is an automatic gate for the landfill, which is something safer and easier to use right now. The maintenance building for A1, we would furnish it with A6, just in general shelving, cabinets, anything else, compressors. A generator. Right now, when we have the landfill, it goes out of power, we have to get out our little 4,000 kilowatt thing and pull a string, and hopefully it starts to get our scale house going, because otherwise we can't bill customers when they come in. It's very much 1980s. I think we can use a standalone generator. Mr. Pugh, this is your question here, A8, and these are the 34-yard self-contained recycled compactors. There's multiple benefits here. This is obviously the largest item for what we're seeking, the largest price tag. This will replace all the existing open-top recycling containers at the sites now. So much like having a compactor is optimal to having an open-top 30, right now when we take a plastic container to the recycler, Sunoco, it's about 3/4 a ton. It's almost all air. A self-contained compactor will make that about 3 to 4 tons. And to Mr. Martin's motion, when we continue having the plastics recycling program, we now have a marketable commodity. If in fact plastics start to take off, we can take and get money for it instead of bringing them mostly air, which is what we have now. These containers can fit at our sites without retrofitting. They fit on the same slabs that our open tops do now. We would simply take the wiring concept and put it up, and $800,000. Another benefit to doing this is taking the existing 20-yard containers we have, and we've already spoken with Wayne Cox at the school division, and he would like to use those in place of the commercial containers they have now through either county waste, through public, or waste management. It would save them considerable money, and it would keep the funds within Amherst County. There's multiple benefits for doing this program. Our landfill meeting room upgrade became even more critical. That's A9, because we had a car plow through the building about 2 weeks ago. So we really could use the funds to repair the hole in the wall and the window that's dangling from the building. In addition, paving the employee parking lot, which is gravel, for some reason it's a magnet to nails and screws. We'd like to just put a layer of asphalt over it when they do the transfer station. And finally, fuel tanks for the transfer station. Right now, our crews often have to go to the sheets in Madison Heights and pull out lawnmowers to fill them up, or do other rudimentary tasks, paying number one, a higher price because you're paying retail, but number two, just the inefficiencies of having to bring equipment to the middle of a residential lot trying to unload and fuel up. It's not efficient at all. So that initial batch would cover if we did the $5 million option. The two yellows are what we talked about. If we do the $6 million, the over-the-road equipment for the transfer station, Mr. Pugh, one of your questions was, do we have hard numbers? The answer is yes. It does make sense for the county to do these. We would need additional trailers and 2 more tractors to do that at approximately $695,000. And doing the cost estimates, we recoup that in about 2.5 years as to put it out into a private hauler. And then the prospective Madison Heights Convenience Center, we do own that property. If you're not familiar with it, I call it the old landfill. It's not under DEQ regulation. It just kind of sits there.
That's the Riverview Road side.
Also, the City Domingo, they used to call it.
Really?
Mhm.
And that would be if the $6 million option is exercised, and the green ones, this would be it would be nice. Outbound scale right now, we only have one scale. Put an additional scale house is about $100,000. Would increase efficiency and safety rapidly. A service truck for public works, this would include a crane, a compressor, and a generator, something we could use to take to our sites and to repair equipment that's on the road. We would also like to turn the transfer station into a convenience site and putting compactors there for recycle. Very similar to what we had up top for the 34-yard self-contained compactors under AA8. We'd like to do the same with the transfer station. Another leachate trailer to haul leachate out of the pond. And then finally, the prospective Burley Hall Convenience Center, if we decide to go down that path, an additional $500,000 towards that endeavor.
Thank you, Ms. You certainly did put a lot of thought into this. And to open up our convenience center 7 days a week, $60,000, is that right?
That's the hard cost. The soft cost is we're right now short on convenience site attendants. We've had deaths, illnesses, COVID, parental illness, spousal illness, you name it. We're already short at least 4 that we need on a daily basis, 2 in a floater, and then to open up the convenience sites would require another 5 or 6. We're having hard enough time staffing it.
How much do we pay them?
It will go up to this morning, I believe, $9 an hour. Come
$10 in January.
$10 an hour in January.
No, that doesn't happen until May now. You gotta extend it.
Make that May. Right now it's about $8 an hour, but it will go up.
And ma'am, remember, that's a recurring cost. These are one-time costs.
Well, yes and no. If we do you have maintenance staff now? You said you hired Caterpillar to come change tires.
We have a prospective employee who could do some work on our equipment.
So I guess my question is, on some of these things, one-time costs, are they gonna take additional employees?
Well, all one-time costs have a tail. I mean, if you're gonna build equipment, then you got to pay to maintain it and so forth.
But absolutely, but just don't bill it as a one-time cost when there are actually recurring costs associated.
Right, and we have considered the recurring costs, and we're hopeful that the savings that this generates will help do that. Much of this uses existing staff. The only thing that really adds additional staff are the new convenience centers, because then we'll have to hire a cadre of additional attendants for the new sites. But with regard to the trucking, the driving, that's using existing staff.
I have a question. The price that you looked at versus, I guess you went out, Thompson Trucking, or whoever it was, and you compared the 2 different prices. Where were you hauling to?
Amelia County, that's the existing landfill that's closest.
Okay. Who owns the big?
Waste Management.
Okay, and there's going to be another one that's developed in Cumberland that's already being built.
There's also one in Brunswick operated by Republic, and we've considered all 3, but at the moment, Amelia is the most advantageous to Amherst.
Brunswick, yeah. So how many trucks are you looking at?
We would need 3 trucks. Right now, we have 1, we need 2 more.
How many trips per day were they estimating in the Draper 8 and leaving that landfill per day?
That I don't know. I can tell you based on our current tonnage, it would be 4.5 hauls a day.
Draper 8 estimated 5.
And County Waste is also building a transfer station at Appomattox. The last time, I believe it passed through the Appomattox County Board of Supervisors. That's going to be around Concord or Stonewall, that area.
That hasn't started yet, and
I'm just saying, it's been planned, it's already passed.
It's been approved, but they haven't
I
started.
think a lot of people are going to utilize that, so. But Brunswick County, you're talking about like a 3-hour, at least a 3-hour drive.
Those are the 3 closest landfills to us.
Any further questions, Mr. Thacker? Thank you, Mr. Thacker.
Yes, ma'am.
revenue budget adjustment. You got some good news for us.
I think so. Okay. So this is I'm gonna give you a proposed revenue adjustment based on, the new numbers we've gotten after COVID has been around for a while. So I didn't adjust very much, but I did go ahead and adjust personal property tax due to history. And you'll notice I still didn't take it up to what it was last year, just because I like to stay conservative. Local sales tax, if I actually took what we brought in the last 4 months, we really should be at 3.6 million, but I think that's pretty aggressive, so I kept it at 3.1. Our business licenses have shown a history of being a little bit higher than anticipated, so I added 50,000 there. Lodging tax is starting to come back, so I added 5 there. Animal licenses, I'm not really sure why, but they've dropped off about half in the last couple of years, so I went ahead and took that off. And interest on bank deposits. So with COVID, the interest rates have tanked, and she is not bringing in what she was bringing in the last 18 months or so. So my first question for you all would be, do you agree with these adjustments, and would you like me to go forward? Would you all like to go forward making this budget adjustment? This is only one side of it, and then we'll talk about what to do with the money.
Your assumptions seem reasonable to me. Any disagreement?
So your business license tax is still down from what it was last year, right?
Yes, I still keep everything conservative on that because I just don't shoot for the top. Like if it comes in at 383, I'd say shoot for 350 and be glad that we got another 20. That's just my conservative nature. And I don't know that with sales tax, it is much. I skipped sales tax somewhere in there. I did not raise meals tax.
I think I've asked this before, but the local sales and use taxes, is that in any way tied to internet sales?
Yes. It's
Okay.
the 1% that the state collects on everything. It's actually tied to your meals as well.
And that's the largest increase on this right there on 18. So
Yes, and actually, I would propose that I add another 100 to the meals tax. I thought I had it in there and it's not there. So it actually needs to be 498, 478.
the reason I'm comfortable with this is because we're able to get a portion of the internet sales tax. If we weren't able to get that, because I'm hearing rumors, well, not even rumors, I mean, we see restaurants closing in the county, but I think people are still purchasing online.
So let me say this about the meals tax. Yes, there are some that have closed, but they're eating somewhere because we're only off by about $90,000 from last year. It's not the same restaurants, but they are eating out.
Yeah, that's fair enough. My wife feels
I was really surprised when all the numbers started coming in, because we only took a hit 1 month, pretty much. It was 34% down, and then after that, we came right back up.
Country cooking going out of business, I mean, that's gonna hurt some, because that did a lot of business in Madison Heights. So, the buffet style places are going out of business left and right.
Like I said, I understand that there are some that have closed and will close, but when I look at the numbers, it's the same amount of money
It says down 90,000 though.
for the whole year. So that's probably yeah, we're back at average for a monthly thing.
So
That
people have found another place to get their food.
Right, exactly, that's what I'm saying, that they found somewhere else to get their takeout, or go eat at a restaurant outside or something. I feel bad for the ones that are not seeing that, but the numbers tell us they're still eating out as well. But I will add another 100,000 in there, so if you all agree with that, because I did leave that out, I thought I had typed it in there and reviewed this 3 times and it's still not there. So we'll be working with 4,768,906. If you all agree to make this adjustment to your budget.
Board members?
Fine with it.
Yeah. Ms. Pugh?
Yeah, she's fine with it.
Yeah, I am. Okay, so now, how should we use this money? Because I can't just stick it on one side, we gotta do something with it. So, we have, and I'll get to the list in a minute, but we have some supplemental recurring items that did not get funded.
Scroll forward one, please. One slide on the screen.
Oh, over here. I'm good on mine. There we go. We had some things that we left unfunded because we didn't know how the money was gonna go. We have a CSA full-time support position that, based on her caseload, I can't tell you enough how much she needs that. The DSS assistant director, while we funded Microsoft Outlook through COVID for the first year, we need to fund Microsoft Outlook going forward. So I've included that here, the annual fees. And performance management software for our HR department. These were the 4 items on the supplemental that were not funded with recurring money. Then we have some additional one-time projects on the supplemental and the CIP. Your supplemental projects, this extra funding could cover everything on this list for the current year. And then next year, the one-time money will be available as recurring money for other operating expenses. So
So what you're saying is some of the recurring money would be used just once for some of these one-time projects.
Correct, like you have this side.
And it'd be freed up again for next year for something different.
Right, and then you can decide if there's something else recurring you need to take care of with that money.
Well, I would say I'm on the social services board, and Miss Mays is getting up towards retirement age. She does not have a assistant director. I know that you all like to groom people in the county government for people to bring up through the ranks. I don't like growing that department any more than anyone else, but it would be helpful if that position was in social services.
I agree with Mr. Pugh on that.
Also, one of the things, if we get in here and we talk about the capital improvement plan or the supplemental, is there any way we can get a list of, I don't even know if we've used any of the COVID money for supplemental?
Oh, yeah.
So what I would like to do is, historically, what have we spent on a yearly basis? That's how you look at your budget. You look at what we spent last year, especially on CIP, $1.5 million.
Correct, we do try to keep it around that.
And we try to keep it in that general ballpark.
Yes.
You know, instead of, I would still like to continue to be in that general ballpark. The COVID money has been a blessing, but I would like to stay in those parameters. I think that would be.
Yes, sir, and we agree with you.
And we actually, that's what we're bringing forward.
That's the proposal she's gonna bring forward,
So
that we
we-
stay within that.
If you do all of the projects on the supplemental can be funded, not a problem. And then when you get to CIP, we would still stay within that parameter if we dip down, if we did the first two priorities on the list.
Well, the first priority is the priority, I guess we discussed last week, the software. We discussed, I know sooner or later, we're gonna have to bite the bullet on that and do that. I think that's the conclusion we came to. It's expensive, I'm in the wrong business, I suppose, but that's something we're probably gonna have to do. We put it off for several years. It's gonna have to be done.
Help me a little bit. So I get the one-time cost. All right, so you're looking at bringing in all of the revised estimates. Do you think we're gonna bring in an additional 368,000?
468.
Yeah, 100,000.
You were in the restroom.
Yeah, you missed that. I made a mistake. I left the meals tax adjustment out. I
Okay.
had it written down and didn't put it in there.
So what you're saying with that is that we would be able to fund everything on these, right there.
The supplemental would be completely funded. The balance, we pushed off doing our normal CIP because of COVID. And now that we know we have the money, we're saying dip down and do our normal and do those first two.
And where is that going to come from? The CARES Act?
Mm-mm. Well, yes, from the savings that is already showing up in your general fund availability report.
It comes from the unobligated general fund.
Yes.
That's where all CIP projects come from.
We have actually gone up to 5.3 million.
Where we put the 2.2.
Yes, but that's not being included yet in
A portion of it is,
the 5.3. Is it included in?
because I had to do through June. So.
Oh, that's right. $1 million of it is in.
$1 million of it is in there, but between the savings that people incurred in their departments, because I kind of put out the stop spending unless you have to direction, and then the savings with the COVID money for March through June payroll, the net effect has been an increase in your general fund back up to 5.3.
All right, so you're saying if, I still don't quite get it, but I kind of understand. So if we go down on the capital improvements project, add the software, add in the master plan, which I think is greatly needed, and I've been saying that for a while now, but then with the other projects that we did fund, that would put us a little over $1 million.
Yes, sir. Right.
Yes, sir.
Which is low end, but typical.
On your capital improvement plan, you said just the first two, is that right?
Correct, the software and the master plan, but he's talking about adding in the three we've already funded.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, hang on, let me scroll down.
Next slide.
Yeah, let me scroll down here so you can see.
That would put everything.
So part of those three projects is being funded by a different reserve for the trail and by a grant. So we're only spending $258,000
Of our own money.
of our own money, because we're not taking any more, 248 out of the general fund.
Okay, what about the medic unit? Is that?
The medic unit is out of the COVID money. The one you're getting right now?
No, you're talking about item number 9, project number 9, down.
No.
That's next year.
No, 2021 Amherst medic unit replacement number 2, $258,000.
That is partially
That
grant funded.
Okay.
Yeah, but that is still in there.
So that one's getting replaced, and then we're getting the additional one.
Correct.
Of the CARES.
Yes. We're not eliminating this one because we're getting the other one.
I just don't want to be in a situation when next March rolls around, we're looking at like this year, we were looking at a 6-cent property tax increase. And I want to avoid that. I don't want to be in that situation again, so.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
This doesn't affect that.
We've also discussed alternatives for capital improvement.
Correct.
Right, but what that was dealing with was how inflation had caught up. I mean, just at our bare bones budget, inflation, it now cost us what we were bringing in. Well, Stacy's calculated that we're now bringing in $468,000 more.
I do need to run the 10-year projection.
And that'll move out our nexus where those two lines cross. I'm calculating that. But at some point in the future, inflation will catch us again, unless we can generate more business revenue. And of course, we're changing the B-poll tax, and we're gonna have to see how that is affected and how that changes our revenues. So we're doing what we can with what we've got to not raise taxes.
So we've got,
So my question is, to which of these parts do you want to put that $468,000? Do you want to fund all the recurring items that were on the supplemental?
Go back up the slide so we see again. So this is the question she's asking. Can we fund the things on this page?
Well, the four at the bottom, those are the recurring ones. Do we fund the ones in the middle, which are the one-timers that we did not fund? Which we can do all of that with the 468 and still have some money left over to put towards the first two priorities in the CIP, with the balance coming from your unobligated general fund.
Which leaves you still because applying it toward the CIP is one time, and you'll have the money the following year as available to you. So we're not drawing down the unobligated general fund as quickly.
So there's only 468. So
right.
If you go down to the CIP and you look at 400,000.
I estimate you're probably going to have to take between 400 and 500. I haven't done the actual math. 400 or 500 out of your unobligated general fund, which would take you to about 4.8.
So, but we got 468 that we would have to touch our unobligated, right?
Correct.
And that was one of the big concerns last year, was our unobligated was too low and we needed to create a revenue source to stream for that.
And we're still on track with the cigarette tax. I mean, we're going to bring that to you. And if you dedicate that toward the future fund, that then secures your CIP out at about $1 million to $1.5 million every year.
My suggestion was go ahead and fund the software, and then you got $68,000 to figure out what you want to do with that.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Ayers.
Oh. All right, do you want to do that before or after the supplemental recurring? Those positions.
In other words, we're suggesting you apply it toward the supplemental first, and then, because
I don't want to touch the general fund, the unobligated return. I don't want to touch it. I mean, I would take that 468 and figure out how to use it. That's my suggestion. Now, I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
Mr. Ayers, you had a question?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Byer, as far as this software, come to the podium. What is your feeling? Do you think that this is going to cost us? I know we have not put it out to bid. What is your feeling as far as, and I know we have support year after year after this. What is your feeling that this will actually be, or what is your feeling and how to deal with this?
As you know, most of you know, we formed the software committee. It's about 7 different departments that comprise that committee. And we did this to see what everybody's needs were and to try to come to some type of resolution that would be a situation that could please everyone. In some technology meetings I've been to and talking to some of my surrounding localities over the past few days, they actually used a consulting service to help get the best.
Let me back you up. The question is, we're budgeting $400,000 a year for 3 years. He's asking, how close is that? Is that high? Is that low? Is that what we expect to spend? Or do you think you can get less?
That's the most that I foresee us spending. That's the Cadillac of software, which I think we've talked about before.
Okay, when you spoke about consulting, is this somebody that may help us as a county get a package that is beneficial to all department heads that has to use this? What is the best way for us to select this? I know there are personal preferences in this, and everybody has their personal preferences.
Right.
We need a system that is going to serve everyone.
And my goal is the advantage of a consultant is that this is the type of thing that they do. They work, actually, Lynchburg City, Campbell County, Bedford, Roanoke, they've all used consultants when they do some type of technology, large plan that's gonna last us for a very long time. I think for the fact that this is gonna be something we're gonna live with for 20 years or longer, the one we have now has been 31 years, I think that it would be advantageous to make that investment, that possibly they have more access to more vendors. I know we narrowed it down to 3 vendors on the software committee that we felt could fill the needs of what we had come up with so far. There may be more. I don't know all the vendors out there, and that's why I felt like maybe it would be good to reach out to a consultant and see if they could give us guidance with this as well.
Understand.
Have I answered, Mr. Ayers?
I had a couple of the constitutionals that had concerns about that they didn't know whether their needs would be met in selecting the software. We just need to make sure that everybody's needs are looked at, and that when we do encumber this kind of expense, that it is a program that will benefit everybody to the best that we can. Not cater to some better than others. So that's my feeling, is that we just do it the best that we can, that it will take care of it. I know we probably can't cover everyone's needs, but the best that we can when we're spending this kind of money.
Mr. Ayers, up until now, Jackie's been working hard to make sure that everybody is included, that no one is excluded, and their concerns are addressed. Do you want someone else to look at that?
No,
besides
I'm not saying I want to. I just want to make sure that that committee, if the committee feels that they need some, Mr. Rogers, it's just to make sure that all the needs are met to the best of the ability with whatever program is selected.
Absolutely.
It is a lot of money to spend, not 1 year, but several years,
right,
to upgrade our software. We need to make sure that it is going to address the needs of every person, their constitutional officers, and everybody that will be utilizing this software. That is my concern, not just. Okay.
And we share that. And of course, my mantra is one team, no seams. And we include the constitutionals in all we do. And Jackie has produced an RFP that I think addresses everybody's concerns, that we haven't been able to put out to go get actual costs, because we need the board's commitment to say, yes, we're ready to do it. If we stick with Jackie's work, we're ready to do that. If you want to hire a consultant to go through that process, again, we can do that too, whatever the board prefers.
Ms. Bauer is the director of IT. Whatever she and the committee feel is the best way to make sure that every party, if she's comfortable with it, I'm comfortable with it. But when you encumber this kind of money, we need to make sure that it is what will address the needs of everybody that we can, not just some.
So what was the final resolution on the schools? Did they decide to come on with us, or they marching to their own band?
They have already signed a contract and marching to their own band. And actually, as we speak, there was like, they're actually working to do some conversions now, and their vendor, which was not one of their original chosen vendors, they actually want to step into the pool of what we as a county can look at as well now too. Which they were not one originally, when we had met, they were not one that we felt would work for, their main focus is the school system, so they were not meeting the needs of their finance as well as their commissioner and their treasurer. So that's where they were lacking.
That's the thing about the school board, they get to do what they think's right for them, so.
And naturally, when we go to do something like this, everyone has their own little silo and their own specialty. And that's, for me personally, I felt would be better to just hire a consultant, make that investment. It may be that if this consultant came in, they may have an option for a vendor that would save us, I'm just making this figure up, so don't hold me to this, $300,000 or $400,000 and not even be close to the 1.2 million. And I want to make sure that I'm giving the staff what they're looking for, but also part of this too is portals that our citizens will get to use when they're trying to transact and do business with us online. So that's the other side of this. It's about our internal operations, but it's about making things easier, especially during these times, for our citizens to do things online with ease as well.
Okay, yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm interrupting you, I'm sorry.
Hmm?
Did I interrupt you?
No, that's
Oh,
fine.
I'm sorry. But remember, consultants cost money.
Yes, sir.
And if we allocate this, it's 400,000 over 3 years, right? So if you hire a consultant, that means you don't have $1.2 million anymore.
Right.
You have 1.2 minus consultant fees, all right? Everybody's aware of that, all right?
We won't know until the contracts the RFPs come back as to what they cost.
I kind of don't understand, you guys came in, we talked about this, talked about
Right.
like 400,000 for the Cadillac. Well,
Now,
I thought, was it right? Whatever.
that's the software vendor that we currently
Oh,
use.
that's one currently.
Now, I have got another vendor, and finding that happy medium that meets everyone's needs, as Mr. Ayers was saying. Some people are gonna get maybe everything they want, some may not get some of the bells and whistles. It's finding that happy medium that meets the majority of everyone's needs. There's another vendor that we have here, and this is just an example because we've not demoed with them, we've not done that in-depth till we do the RFP. I can't say this, but a roundabout figure he gave me, he thinks he can do everything for us for 450,000. So that's a considerable savings from 1.2 million. So it can vary just drastically. And that's why when I think about the consultant, I think about, I compare it to actually what we just did with broadband and the investment we made with that consultant that did help us pick the best broadband vendor for the county. And that's the same type of thing. We're actually making that investment or a greater amount with a software product that's going to last possibly 20 years.
I guess my question is, we've been talking about this for well over a year, along with the committee. Why are we now in September of 2021, 2020, and now we're going to talk about a consultant?
It came about as a result of a technology conference that I attended actually just this past week. It's the Commonwealth of Virginia IT Symposium that Richmond does every year, and I attend. And there was a special session of this type of thing. And that's what really brought it to my forefront of my attention.
Well, I tell you, Ms. Bauer, when I heard that you were head of this committee, was looking at this, I had full confidence. So, full confidence.
Thank you.
And you and your committee and what you all looked at and satisfy the needs of everybody. But
And we can proceed. I mean, thank you for that, Ms. Tucker. And I can proceed without that. That's fine. I just wanted to mention it to you all, but we actually can move forward as we have been.
No, I don't have a problem if you want to consult them, but try to work within the budget constraints. We're talking about. Less would be great, yeah, but, you know.
Exactly.
So, board members, do we have a consensus that we want to fund in the CIP, the
top two items?
Yes, thank you.
Well, all right, it's late, I'm old. 400, all right, we're looking at getting an additional 460,000 in, you know,
Recurring
revenue. Yeah, recurring revenue, right? But if we look at that chart up there, right? And I know it's old and some of that stuff was funded, right?
The stuff above the red line was funded.
Okay.
And I've taken all the HVAC out that we funded through COVID.
All right, so if everything on that list, we're talking about funding out of 160 right? How much is that, what is the total of that on that list? Because what it says is $633,000, which is more than the 460 returning that we have.
Okay, so part of it was funded already, so that's in that total. And it's not all,
My point is this.
I know that when I totaled it, the recurring was a little over 100,000. And the non-recurring was 250 to 300 now. But let me go back and see if I can find it.
That's fine, but 460,000 recurring is gonna take care of this list.
Yep.
Right? So where is the 600,000 gonna come from for the top two projects in the city?
The unobligated general fund.
Right. I got that, I understand that. I thought you said something about you didn't want to.
I didn't, I know the general fund has grown, but a large part of that is the COVID money, I would think, right?
It's only half of it.
Yeah, we put it in there, so we're talking about doing some other things with that money. So internet expansion, I know we put that away and we put it in our general fund, but that is one of the targets we're looking at. So we don't want to go in there and raid that.
Well, that's my feeling, Mr. Pugh, is that we stay out of that. I mean, I would.
Well, to use other words of yours, Mr. Pugh, you know, you don't want to go more than $1 million or $1.5 million because that's what we typically do. Well, so far this year, we've spent $250,000, all right? And
Well,
so when we add the top two projects.
How about the COVID money? I mean, that is funded more.
I'm just talking about the unobligated general fund. That's where the issue lies now. You know, should we spend anything from the unobligated general fund or not? We normally spend $1 million to $1.5 million each year. So far this year, you've spent $250,000, okay? Because we've held things back, we've delayed things. We're suggesting that you pick up 2 more projects worth $600,000, okay? So that would take you to $850,000, still less than $1 million.
And we're gonna talk about another project in a few minutes, right, that may come out of the unobligated general.
The broadband?
Sheriff's vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's several options.
Yeah, there's
Well,
several ways to do
coming out
that.
fine. That's
So I can tell you that 372,000 will cover everything on your supplemental.
I guess where I'm at is I'm fine with covering the supplemental out of the revised budget projection, right? Fine with that. Where I think we ought to be is say, okay, we've got this, whatever it is now, 2.2 or 2.3. We're talking, right? All right, let's use a portion of that to do these projects, but let's not go over a certain amount. Right? And then we need to set aside a pretty large chunk of that for when this lit community study comes back, right?
And we should have about $2 million available and free.
I don't want the lit community study to come back and then we'll say, oh, well, sorry, we spent all the money on X, Y, and Z.
Wait a minute, I thought we were gonna have about $2 million to put to broadband, is that
That's
not
my
right?
understanding.
Huh?
That's my understanding.
Well, you do, 2 million.
We've grown the capital fund by $2 million. Now, one of those million is really broadband money because it's COVID money that we parked in. The other $1 million is just, it's accumulated, as you described.
Mr. Oaks,
And all we're suggesting is that we spend $850,000 of that.
Is that the salary switch money?
Yes,
Yes,
Okay.
which hasn't dropped in yet.
yes, $1 million has.
That's from last year, but there's another $1 million,
930, no, I'm sorry, 800,000.
okay, another $800,000 to drop in.
So do we or do we not have approximately $2 million to put to broadband if we chose?
You have 1.8.
1.8
In
million.
addition to the 620 you've already given.
Okay.
In addition to the 450 that the school has promised to devote toward.
Right.
Because remember, we're using COVID money, 450 for the schools, and they're gonna take 450 and add it into the lit communities plan too. So we're over $2 million in
Okay.
total toward broadband.
Okay.
Okay, but if we spend $400,000 for Bright software this year and $200,000 for master plan, are we still gonna have the money to spend on infrastructure for broadband?
Yes. That money is actually money that was left over from the savings within the budget. That has nothing to do with the savings from the salary switch. We added about 1.3 million to the general fund.
And of course, assuming we go forward, next summer we start the cigarette tax, which takes care of the unobligated general fund. If you do that, you will dedicate $1 million to $1.5 million a year just toward anything, whatever you want to do.
I know you said this. Can you tell me how much is in the unobligated general fund right now?
Estimated based on the draft, 5.3 million.
5.3.
That's after we take out the rainy day reserve of almost 6.7.
So, okay.
You have that attached in your.
It's at
board
the end of
package.
your stuff, so
In departmental reports.
I'm sorry, 6.3. Yeah, once you take out the 6.3 and all the assigned funds and committed funds, you still have 5.3 million.
Okay.
And that includes 1 million from from the salary switch, or last year, March to June.
It's a net effect. Yes, it's a net effect, because you all did do projects last year too, that we did not have to draw down. Technically.
So minus $1 million of CARES Act fund.
Takes you back to the 4.3 that you were at.
4.3. Another 800,000 will drop in from CARES fund,
That is, yes, right now that's the anticipated number.
which will put you back up to 5.1. Theoretically. And if we take out the 600,000, we're at what, 4.5? No, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And if we take out, I know we're getting, we'll be down to 4.4 million.
All right, at some point, we have to quit talking about this and make a motion, get some direction.
Well, that's true, but I think it's important for us to know what we're doing.
Don't disagree, but I think we said the same thing. I've said it, you said it, we've all said it.
Well, can we break this down? I support the 400, using 468. I'm not gonna support any, I'm not obligated at this point. And out of that 468, I would absolutely, the 400,000 for the, new software system, I would support that. And, I would like to make, unless you got a different motion, I'd like to make that a particular motion, unless you want to put it all together. Otherwise, I'll be voting no on some of the items.
But you already said that you wanted to fund the social services.
Well, that's, yeah, and that would be the additional
That's in the supplemental budget.
Are you gonna take them out of priority?
$55,000.
So now you're taking them out of priority order.
So what is your issue? You don't want to fund the master plan?
No, I just don't, like I said, March 9th, we're looking at a 6-cent tax increase to fund all of this.
No, don't, please don't say that. We're
We were, absolutely.
I thought you meant next year we'd be.
Yeah, no, but that's what we looked at in March, and we got blessed with a lot of COVID money, and, at this point in time, I'm not prepared to spend that down. That reserve was like 16 or 17 million dollars, not that long ago, and it's going to go down to.
Yeah,
Well, that's before you take out the reserves and stuff.
I understand.
It's at 15 something right now, before all that.
All right.
And that number included financial reserves, and it also included monies that were just plain lost
And
in
we
the
were
system by
I know,
that
and then we had
financial.
drained that down to a point that we didn't have any, we're running out in the next 2 years, so that's my concern.
And that's why we're talking about the cigarette tax, taking care of that.
So Microsoft Outlook, that sounds like we have to do that because we funded Outlook through the COVID money, so we're gonna have to.
Well, we want to keep that going, yes.
Well, the reason I said that is because next year we're gonna have to put it in the budget, and just to make you aware that we'd be adding that into the budget using that recurring money.
Are there any annual fees for Lotus Notes now?
Mhm.
So that money's just gonna flip over to Outlook, I would assume.
But this is still the additional.
This is on top of that.
On top of
Okay.
Yeah.
So if,
All right, let me ask you this. If we said, yep, 200,000 for a Madison Heights master plan, are we ready to go on it?
First of all, where that number came from, Mr. Martin, was out of your head. So we don't have any estimates. We haven't gone out to any contractors. What we have done is we are using the design experience and expertise of the developer that owns the largest parcel in the middle of the whole area. Just this week, we met with him and with other property owners, and we are now going to define the scope to basically the 4 largest property owners and have him design that much. That's about 300 acres. It would take us 25 years to build that out. And we want to go with that as a design and begin moving that forward in hopes that we can share that with HDR, who is doing the CVTC redevelopment plan too. So at some point, we need to go to a real design firm and say, take this and finish it out for us, figure out, we have to do a community development scheme of some kind or another, and then finding developers, whether the current owner and his development team wants to go with it, or we're going to build a coalition locally and that sort of thing.
All right, everyone knows I'm a planner, and I'm definitely behind planning. I think that what our vision is for this plan needs to include might be a little different, and I think that might be something that we should discuss at the board retreat. That being said, I don't think it's a good time to enter into a master planning effort right now, because I'm a firm believer that master plans need a lot of citizen input, and I don't think we're in a position to get that right now due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So, Mr. Pugh, I would support your motion of not having that in there. So if you're prepared to make the motion of 400,000 for the software and all of the other recurring costs, I could support that.
Well, what's the other cost though? How much is that?
The total recurring is about 117. So yes, you will exceed the 468 by about 50,000.
All right, well, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and fund the 400,000 for the new software, as well as the 117,000
Recurring?
recurring for the supplemental.
And the non-recurring projects on the supplemental? Any of those?
That's my motion.
Wait a minute, I got a question. I want to do the non-recurring. Non-recurring was what?
The top part of the supplemental page.
Okay.
Or, he said non-recurring, the recurring is at the bottom.
I thought you guys recurring.
He said recurring.
He said recurring, which is the.
Oh.
bottom.
Which one's? Hold on, let me rescind my motion. Let's get this straight.
You want to do the 4 recurring projects of a CSA program coordinator, support position, the DSA assistant director, the Microsoft Outlook, and the performance management software. Those are recurring costs on the supplemental. They come to approximately $117,000.
Okay. Plus.
The 400,000 for software.
That's coming out of 2 different funds. Right?
His motion is to use up the 468 and then, so I'm saying there'll be a difference of about $50,000 or $60,000 that has to come out of the unobligated general fund to do that.
Want to ask? So we need 2 different motions, don't we? Technically.
Well, you can break it up into as many as you want.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to me to, what you're trying to do makes sense, yet recurring cost, we're gonna have to be paying that next year too, right?
But you have $468,000 worth of recurring revenue.
That's right.
So you will be able to pay it next year, plus whatever else comes up.
So, I mean, So what you're saying is you would take, 460 minus $117,000 is
350-ish.
350-ish, right? So you'd only be taking 50,000 out of
The unobligated general.
unobligated general fund.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So we wouldn't be doing anything. We wouldn't be doing the museum exterior upgrades, the record scanning, roofing, got window.
No, you would just see all that again in next year's budget.
If you want to do those, they would have to come out of the unobligated general.
Which those things
They're small.
are very small.
245,000 total.
Well, no, we did everything above the line.
Yes, I just added up the part in the middle.
The part in the middle, so the 1405 down to 1500, is that right?
Yes. Well, 245 and some change.
245. Well, if we pass Mr. Pugh's motion, is there anything so that we can have a separate motion for fund those?
Absolutely nothing. You have certainly.
I want to make, my motion is just going to be one thing, all right?
Mhm.
I'm going to make a motion that we appropriate 400,000 for the software system, the accounting software system. That's my motion.
Okay.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Pugh. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, but that motion passes.
Okay. I'm looking at this, so you got 400,000 plus 117 plus 245, right? That's the three pots.
Mhm.
And what is the total of this thing?
A little under 760. Should be right around 760. You can see if I get close.
No.
245, 117, and 400.
245 plus 117.
762, 400.
Came up with 762, I said 760.
Ms. Pugh, while you're ciphering, do you plan to address the DSS stuff? Not make a motion.
No, I don't, I mean, we spent 400,000 on the software, and that leaves us $68,000 out of that recurring money to do something with.
Well,
Everything else has
You
to come,
didn't stipulate where that 400 was coming from.
it's coming out of the recurring.
well, that wasn't part of your motion.
All right, well,
We assumed that would come out of the unobligated general fund, because that's where that money comes from, the CIP, for CIP projects.
Well, Mr. Lockley helped me with rules of procedure, but.
Can the person on the prevailing side make a motion to withdraw it if that's what he wants to
We
do?
were all on the prevailing side, so we can make a motion to reconsider that. Huh?
That's correct.
Okay, so make a motion to reconsider.
I make a motion to reconsider.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Pugh. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Mr. Pugh, please.
I make a motion that the $400,000 for the software comes out of the $468,000 of recurring money.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Pugh. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
We have 68,000 in recurring money. To figure out.
So which is most important, the CSA full-time program support position or the assistant director? It's like you got enough to do on that.
I would say the CSA.
Yeah, the
Because
CSA.
we're subject to significant fines for errors, and her workload continues to grow.
Okay, then I make a motion that we,
I think you could do CSA and the Microsoft Outlook
I was gonna get there.
and most of the performance management software. We might be able to find it.
So we've got 68,000 left. 68,000 minus 47. You're looking at 21,000, right?
Did I change that number? Is it 47 or 45?
46,000.
No, that's the DSS. The CSA is 45.7.
34.
How much is left of the recurring?
68.
68,000.
Mhm.
So 68,000 minus the
45,734.
40, let's just call it 46. That's $22,000, right?
Yes.
So I would make a motion that we fund the CSA program support position, that we fund the $10,000 for Microsoft. 15,000 for Microsoft Office. Leaves 7. You can't do the human resources software for 7,000.
We can, because I'll make another motion.
Okay, then that's my motion right there.
Out of the, recurring.
Out of the reframe, at least 7,000.
All right, motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. I'm going to make a motion that we finally fund the assistant director at $46,994, plus the performance management system at $10,000. For $56,994 comes out of the general unobligated fund. That's my motion.
That's a reoccurring expense.
And that would be okay with the amount of money that we are spending on one-time stuff for this year. We'll have it next year.
All right, motion on the floor. All in favor? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you.
And then it'll just get built into the budget,
Yeah.
right, the next year's budget.
So you, we're there, you don't want to touch any of the other supplementals?
Not right now.
Okay, that's all I want to know.
All right.
All right, and that's all you need from us on that item. Is that right, Ms. Wilkes?
Yeah.
Okay, moving along to,
Is there something that we need to pull up for this one?
I'm trying to get to the agenda.
revenue,
I think it's the sheriff.
vehicles for the sheriff's
Vehicles
office.
for the sheriff.
Madam Chair, maybe next time when we put together, the agenda, we can get the sheriff up a little sooner in our discussions. I know he's been here all this whole meeting, and please excuse us for having you wait this long, but I think out of courtesy, next time we should allow you to come sooner.
You make an excellent point, Mr. Pugh, and that was just bad planning on my end, and I apologize, Sheriff.
No, ma'am.
Well, no,
Maybe the county administrator won't make such a big agenda next time.
Oh, I mean,
He's working on it.
All right, the sheriff's vehicle.
Okay, so the sheriff seeks 2 additional vehicles. He's here to answer questions. These vehicles do qualify for COVID money. The question for us is which fund source do you want to use? And you have 3 choices. There's the unobligated general fund, because it's always there. There is your CARES Act money that you have set aside for the salary switch. And there is, and then you can use a combination of those. Now, there is $39,000, which Stacy, you may have to explain, of unused money from the supplemental projects that is available, which means only $74,000 would come from the unobligated general fund or the CARES Act salary switch. Can you explain?
Yes.
Fantastic. Here.
Mr. Rogers, every time we start touching that CARES Act savings, is that money that we are in our head thinks is for broadband?
Well, ma'am, you all haven't had your discussion yet as to what you're going to use that savings for. I am certainly hopeful that you'll use it toward broadband, but you all have not yet decided what that's for. It's just sitting there.
I'm getting extremely anxious about the fact that we're moving a lot of buckets of money, and we're going here and going there, and we know, we've heard here tonight, we have $1.8 million that we could use for broadband.
And we haven't touched it yet, because everything that we just funded.
That's right.
Correct.
Except that last position.
Which did come out of the general fund unobligated.
Right.
So-
What you just told me earlier was that 1.8 million will be in the unobligated general.
Yes, 1 million is already there.
So that COVID, the CARES money is in that 5.3 million that we've been talking about.
Right, and
So
that's
far,
why,
we haven't touched.
right, that's to make sure that we
Yes,
keep
ma'am,
that
you're
in
correct.
front of our, don't let us touch that without reminding us.
So the 39,000, if you remember back when you adopted your budget, we adopted so many supplemental projects. There were several HVAC projects in there that we have now moved to COVID. So that money is already appropriated, it's already in your budget, the 39,000. You could just reallocate it to the sheriff's vehicles.
Okay.
And then of course the 74 would have to come from somewhere.
Now, and I suppose there is one other source that we did not present, but has been suggested by others, and that is the fine and forfeiture fund, the sheriff's portion of the fine and forfeiture fund.
I recommended against that.
I know you did.
Yeah, I know you did, but I still like to talk about that.
Well, then I'm gonna ask Ms. Sheriff Howard, would you come talk about how that's going down so much?
Sure, come. I'll bring my 5 minutes to it.
Hello, board. I'm E.W. Brown with Sheriff Amherst. I live at 349 Woodland Drive. The fine revenue is down a whole lot from what it used to be. Of course, we had COVID there, and the officers, we basically didn't want them going out working a lot of traffic and getting interaction with the citizens there. The state police, everyone pretty much told the officers to stand back unless it was a real high-speed thing, stuff like that we needed to address. Of course, drunk drivers and stuff like that. But our overtime guys were working overtime, working traffic enforcement. That's down a lot. That's down a whole lot. The fines coming in from the courthouse now. I talked to Bev Lewis at Journalistic Court. She said people are not paying fines. There's no incentive. Used to be you lost if you got a speeding ticket. If you didn't pay your fine, you lost your license. Well, of course, the General Assembly's passed it then where they can't take your license for any of that stuff anymore, as far as general fines, not paying your fines and stuff. So money's not coming in the way it was. We fund some positions out of that money at the fine revenue. We pay the evidence clerk, we pay her that salary. We pay overtime out of that salary as far as guys working overtime, traffic enforcement stuff, plus a DMV grant. We use that too. We pay for computer systems. I'll let Charlotte tell you all the things we use, and she's probably better at that than I am.
As he stated, we pay half of a salary. Our canine training, we have to use the fund revenue for that to train our canines. We also have a drug task force, and fund revenue pays for that. The overtime, of course, the workforce supplies, we have to use the fund revenue for that. As far as the workforce for lawnmowers, lawnmower repair, goes for all of that. Okay.
I might also add that we usually only have 2 traffic positions that's funded solely by that, and we don't have any one of those positions right now at all.
We haven't filled those positions because the fund revenue is going down.
Yeah, I found that interesting. Well, it's a consequence of not holding people accountable. So if they don't have to pay the fine just sits there unpaid, but they keep the license. Typically, they don't go after that money, or can they go after that money? Is it even worth going after that money?
The state can go after it for us, your tax deductions and stuff like that, and they will, I guess. But as far as us getting that normal money coming in the way it was, it's not coming there.
The animal shelter is also taking a considerable amount of the fund revenue lately. We've had to do a new concrete slab down there for I guess that was for the dogs. We had to do a cover for the animal cages that's being installed tomorrow. That takes a considerable amount of it. We had some issues with our computer system this year, a couple months ago, and I think we spent roughly $40,000 to $50,000 out of fund revenue for that. And that was an unexpected expense.
So what you're saying is you don't think you could fund any of these vehicles out of the fund revenue?
it's gonna take away money that I don't spend money I don't have. In other words, if I can employ 2 more people later on here, hopefully if somebody comes up and we could do that, I'd like to do that. My budget at home is the same way as my budget there. I don't waste money that I don't have. Sure, if I have to do that, these cars come up right now. We normally buy the Ford Explorers and they're 35,000. Right now, Dominion Dodge contacted us and they had 2 vehicles for 28,000 apiece. That was saving us $14,000 just on the vehicles. We don't have any Dodges. Well, we have Chargers, but we don't have any Durangos. And they were offering these to try to get us to deal with them. It was a one-time deal where they had these vehicles there. It was a fly-by-night thing. We had to make a decision whether we're going to buy them now, we're going to lose out. And I told the gentleman to hold them to the date, and that's what we did.
Okay, so the last meeting, when we didn't do this, you know, it was presented to the Board of Supervisors that the reason you needed these vehicles is it was going to take you 3 days to clean one.
And that's not true. That was a
That's not true, so I understand that, but I want to make sure that that's publicly put out there.
Right, that's not true.
So what would happen is if there is a COVID exposure, your deputy is going to have to spray that vehicle. After he sprays it, which is probably going to take 30 minutes, it needs to dry, he's going to get it to another vehicle. My understanding also that was not presented in this report is that you also have a deputy that's going to be coming out.
I've got one in the academy right now, and I don't have a vehicle for him right now. Yes, sir.
So it's to put a deputy.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So can you explain what the $113,000 covers? Is it the car and the equipment?
Yes.
Yes, the cars cost to outfit them now. In fact, we get $150,000 a year for cars. Back when the former sheriff was there, you could buy 5 cars for that. You can't do it anymore. When Craig, I said, Craig got enough money to buy 5 cars. He said, sure, that's about the car. It doesn't buy it. The equipment goes in them. Now we have to have cameras in our cars. We have cameras in every single car we have. That's $6,000 just for a camera. Radars, $2,000. The sirens, $375. We use the sirens over and over, but after they get worn out, we have to get rid of them. GPS antennas on the car and cameras. The GPS antenna is $219,000. They have to have a computer in the car. That's $219,000. I mean, $219. No, not thousand. I'm sorry, not that much. I'm sorry. The modem form is, it says the modem here is $818. I've got a list of everything here, and it's $21,506 to outfit the car. $21,506 to outfit the car. And that's everything from the lights to lettering. When I seen you at a meeting, me and you wanted to know about the striping and stuff. Well, I'll give you a low price, and you said, well, how about the decals and stuff? That's another $900 or whatever for that.
I mean, I'd like to see it come out of the COVID money. The COVID money, yes, 74,000, we'd have to get out of COVID money plus the 30. So 39,000 could come from the reallocation of the money. That would be my suggestion, because the money is coming from the federal government for COVID-related expenses.
Right. And I didn't know that. I was at a sheriff's conference a couple weeks ago, and I learned from another sheriff that was telling me, he said, did you get anything out of the COVID money for vehicles? And I said, I didn't know anything about it. He said, well, this is Washington County, and they got 16 vehicles. I'm not asking 16 vehicles. I just.
Madam Chair, I make the motion that we fund the 2 vehicles, $39,000 from the supplemental projects and $74,074 from the CARES Center.
From the general fund unobligated, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
General fund unobligated. Right.
And the reason.
No.
Well, that's what I'm asking, because that's what the motion was.
Yeah, the CARES Act savings is in the general, unobligated general fund, but we're still keeping that separate. We're keeping track of that.
Okay, so the way he
You still
said
keep
was
on
accurate. Sorry, Mr.
That was the way it was worded.
No, he worded it right, but you changed it.
Madam Chair.
There's a pot that is not allocated, that we keep moving around right now. We haven't done anything with it. So if you take the 74 out of COVID money, I'm just gonna move it out of there and create another line, that CARES Act update list.
On your list of COVID projects, you'll have a $74,000 item. that'll reduce those savings by 74,000.
Ms. Martin, I interrupted you, I apologize, go ahead.
Okay.
That's what you just described. That's
I
how
understand.
Go ahead, Mr.
I'd like this board to recall, I have no qualms where this money's coming from, but we need to remember that Mr. Hopkins came and asked us after the deadline to do something for his staff in that office in the service authority, and he was told no, that he didn't make it in by the deadline. I have no objections on these patrol cars. I think we need to consider where this money comes from. If it comes out of the COVID money, then we need to reconsider his staff, that we did not do anything for them, and do that. So if it comes out of the general fund, that's fine. But if we take it from that COVID money, I think it's only right that we reconsider those conditions those folks are working in that close quarter of that office, because that's my only concern, is that we need to think about that.
And I appreciate yours. Let us finish this motion, and then I would like to make a comment to your comment.
And then I can amend my motion that the funding comes $39,000 from the supplemental project, and $74,074 comes from the general fund unobligated fund balance. That's not touching it.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion passes. Now, Mr. Ayers, to your point, and you make a good point. However, I think that should go to the Service Authority Board, and let that board make a request to this board. Fair enough?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right. Appropriation of funds for public works.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, gentlemen. And ladies.
Greetings again. So you heard from people earlier that there's a hole in the trail we'd like to get fixed. This started in March, a washout near about milepost 3.5. And several weeks ago, it washed out about double to the point where you can no longer drive a vehicle to get around it to face anywhere else on the trail. We did get a survey. We did get an estimate from Pertinent Profit for their engineering costs and repair costs. They estimated over $60,000 to do it. I believe Public Works can do the repairs ourselves with the equipment we have in-house. But we are asking tonight to have that funds obligated. There is another spot down the trail. You do have 2 pictures in your packet. The second spot is about a mile further down. It does require more engineering because it's on an adjacent property. If there are funds left over in the request, we would like to repair that second portion of the trail. If in fact there's still funds left after this request, the Ty River Bridge has rotting decking boards that cost about $400 to $500 a piece to replace. We'd like to use the funds for that as well. That's what's before you tonight.
Regarding the Ty River Bridge, that should be a joint, wouldn't that be a joint project between the 2 counties?
It is, sir. They will repair their half of it. I guess you draw a meridian or something down the middle. They have Claire Richardson of the Nelson County Parks Department will repair her side.
Can we put the photographs on the screen? So this is the part that basically looks like it was a culvert pipe underneath and it's over top, arched out, and it's basically washed that out. So this is the #1 project to repair.
Yes, sir.
You're talking about doing this with existing public works staff?
Yes, sir.
All right, so I'm assuming that you're going to have to dig that culvert pipe out, build a head wall and an end wall on both sides.
The existing pipe is functional. There is not a washout above the part before the pipe, which is the problem, is washing around the pipe. The existing pipe is satisfactory, but it needs to be built around it.
So you're basically going to have to build the walls.
Correct.
And there's a lot of environmental issues, right?
We've already contacted DEQ. They said we can use an existing permit they have to make a general repair and no further action is needed.
Okay. Yeah, I think this trail is very important to the community. I use it just about every day. So the next photo.
grants. Where'd I go wrong? There is no backbone tank.
Yep. So magnets, just don't have all of the same one. They're all separate sections.
So this piece is not included in the 54?
It is, but the estimate from Hurt and Profit was just to fix the first one with an outside contractor, which I'm suggesting we could go in-house in Public Works and save the majority of that money. And then whatever monies we've saved on the first one, we can move to this portion and do the same repair.
And what are you gonna do?
Essentially, it joins an adjacent property, therefore we have to get their permission to actually get it engineered where we can't see the culvert pipe. It's buried about 2 feet below what you can see. So we'll have the engineer come out and say, this is the specs to which it should be dug out, and we should have it bulkheaded, and it would drain properly.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with mine, I don't have a problem doing the work. I'd like to see them both fixed regardless.
Like what?
I'd like to see them both fixed.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless, I mean, I think they have to be. So, yeah, I definitely support this, taking it out of the, I think, was it like 280,000 of the Parks and Rec. Yeah, whatever. But if you don't have it, you'll have to, if you don't have enough, you'll have to come back with another.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
I'd like to just go ahead and make sure we have enough allocated to get it done.
Yes.
Mark, will you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion that we allocate up to $100,000 to fix the roads in the trail. That doesn't include the bridge, but just these two. Yeah, out of time.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you very much for your initiative and innovation.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
County Attorney's report, Mr. Lockerbie.
Mr. Hopkins asked me to give an update on something going on with AXA, especially for Mr. Ayers and Ms. Tucker. If you recall, a couple of meetings ago, the Board of Supervisors adopted a support agreement to support borrowing by the Service Authority to do work on the Grand Creek Dam. As it turns out, they, after doing further engineering using a new model that Department of Conservation and Recreation lets them use, they're actually going to be able to do the project for substantially less money. So rather than borrowing $4 million, they're only going to borrow $1 million. So that puts the county on less of a hook for moral obligations there. That should be happy to know we're spending less money than we thought.
That's great.
So that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lockerbie. Liaison and committee reports, they're self-explanatory unless, Mr. Rogers, you have something you want to point out.
No, ma'am, they're just for information.
Right. Departmental, the spotlight,
Spotlight is available if you all want to proceed.
board members, what's your pleasure?
I'd like to hear if we postpone the last meeting.
Come forward, please. And again, we apologize for making you wait so long. We're excited about what you have to tell us.
And if you don't mind, I'll take my mask down.
Okay.
We're the Amherst County Human Resource Department.
Then you need to stay close to the mic for YouTube purposes.
How's that? Okay. We're a 2-person department. Nathan France is our HR specialist. He's right here. He has a bachelor's degree in human resource and mass communications. And then I'm the director of human resources and have multiple degrees and certifications because I'm close to the end of my 25-year career. This is a snapshot of the Amherst County workforce. We, at the end of June, we had 226 full-time positions, and that includes the regular county departments, constitutional offices, DSS, library, and museum. At that point, we had 16 vacancies. That's sort of normal for us. We have anywhere from 50 to 110 active part-time and seasonal positions. And the reason it's a wide range is it's a very fluid workforce. We have anywhere from, soccer referees to our convenience center attendants. Some of those convenience center attendants, because they're older members of the workforce, may not work for a few months because they may have been ill or they may be caring for a loved one. And so that group tends to be very fluid. Our largest departments are the Sheriff's Office, Public Safety, and DSS. That hasn't changed from 2 years ago when I talked to you. Last year, fiscal year, we hired 47 new full and part-time employees, and then we had 55 employees that separated. 12 of those were new hires that separated during their probationary period. And we do encourage people to use the probationary period to find the right fit for their department. And then we had 7 retirements last year. The retirements have been picking up every year. I have handled more retirements since I have been here than I had handled in my whole career previously. And that will continue as those baby boomers get ready to retire. You all funded 4.5 new positions last year. The IT specialist, circuit court deputy clerk, a truck driver, and heavy equipment operator, and then the HR specialist went from part-time to full-time. And our year-to-date turnover rate, which gets larger as the year progresses, currently is 11%. It was 17% for last calendar year. So we're probably going to end up about in the same place, somewhere around 15 to 17%. These are your EEO statistics for the last 3 years that we have collected those. As you can see, the number of full-time employees has stayed pretty steady. The average age in years has gone down slightly. I expect that to continue as we hire new and younger employees. You'll continue to see that age go down. Your average years of service with the county is going down. That's a factor of us hiring younger employees. And then the male to female ratio, there was a slight increase in the number of females and in the number of minorities. So that's an accomplishment that we're doing a little bit better on that. These are the main human resource functions. I'm not going to take the time to read them all this late at night because you guys can read them. But as you can see, we do a lot with a little. We have the smallest budget of any department in the county. Recruitment is decentralized to the various departments. However, we assist them as much as they want us to. So that might be us collecting the applications, screening them. It might be sitting on the interview panels, and we do reference checks when requested. We're responsible for advertising positions and for doing all the background checks. The challenge is that with the exception of public safety, who has a very, very formalized process, we really need to have centralized recruitment to make sure that the hiring process is more uniform, because it's not uniform across the county right now. And the accomplishment is that we have recently worked with IT to add a fillable application to the website to make it easier for people to complete our rather long website. And we're using Indeed to pre-screen applicants, and that has been very successful, and it has increased the number of applicants that we have when we have a position. We also do onboarding. These are the different things we do on onboarding. Like I say, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this late at night. And we also do benefits administration and leave tracking. And we initiated electronic leave tracking in 2008, and we're going to be expanding that with the new Time Clock Plus system in the next month. And I'm going to let Nathan talk a little bit about Time Clock Plus, because he's the one that administers it for us.
Hey, so Time Clock Plus is our new system that soon, for most county employees, should be taking over for our current system, the Lab Tech, which we typically what we use it for is for leave tracking and for timesheet purposes. So I'm just going to minimize this real quick. and just show you kind of how that looks from an employee standpoint. So they'll either be able to log in on their computer, or we can configure it on their cell phone as well. And basically they'll see the same screen. We have a test employee set up, so I'll show you kind of what clocking in will look like for them. So test employee, they'll type in their ID number, they'll hit clock in here, and they'll take continue, select their job code, so they can select it per department. Right now, we've only really rolled it out for public works, so that's the only job codes that are in there now. And then it'll ask you these 4 screening questions. So currently, for regular county employees, each day we are having to get a paper screening questionnaire, and from every employee, we're having to keep track of that. This is going to eliminate that to where they can just go in here, answer the questions, boom, done. So they'll need to answer no to all of these questions in order to be able to clock in. So are you experiencing nasal congestion, all that good stuff? Have you had direct contact with somebody that's had symptoms? Or is somebody you've been tested positive for COVID in 14 days? No, clock in, it'll allow you to clock in. So right now I'm clocked in as the employee. I could type in my code again, hit clock out, I'd be clocked out. The only other thing you can really do from the employee side is log into your dashboard here, or you can also clock in and clock out. You can view your hours here. So this is just a test employee. You can see where I've clocked in and clocked out a couple times, just testing stuff. And you can also submit your leave requests here as well. So yeah, and you can also view your referrals, so how much you have in your banks. But yeah, so I think it's going to be a great system for us moving forward.
Technology is a wonderful thing.
It really is. Yeah, thank you all.
Will this tie into the new financial software?
It will not.
No, it does have the ability to do that. Now we'll decide whether that's the best use of those funds, or if we want to use whatever is built into their system. But we don't need to make that decision now. This will hold us over, but we can tie it in if we need to.
I'm sorry, Linda.
Oh, no, I'm just not very technically savvy.
I didn't make it easy for you either.
All right. The other thing we do is we write HR policy and make recommendations and interpretations for employees. And then we also make salary and staffing recommendations. As you know, we did the market study a year ago, and thank you guys so much for investing in our employees. You do not know what that meant, that for you all during COVID to have the courage to invest in those employees and say you're valuable and you're worth being paid a market rate. I can't thank you enough for that, and I know our employees appreciate it as well. And then we also do workers' compensation and line of duty act, which is the loan administration for our hazardous duty folks in the sheriff's office and in public safety. And we also coordinate organizational trainings, and these are some of the trainings that we've had in the past year. And then there's just the day-to-day issues. I do have an open door policy that includes taking phone calls and emails after hours and on the weekends, because personnel issues, we have staff that work 24/7, and personnel issues do happen at all hours. So the department heads do have my home cell phone number, know that they can call me if they need me. We try to balance the needs of the organization with the best interest of the employees, and that's a fine gray line sometimes to walk. But we try to be fair to the employees, but we also try to take care of the organization. And then we stress communication and documentation, and we're currently addressing COVID-19 concerns on a daily basis. This is starting to wear on our employees because in addition to our normal workloads, and we're fairly leanly staffed, we are dealing with all this COVID stuff too, and the anxiety of the employees. So we're really feeling it right now. And we also maintain personnel records. Right now we're very paper-based. Eventually with the new financial system, we'll be able to be more electronic-based, and we'll be able to scan and get rid of a lot of that paper, which will be a great thing. And if you have more information, you can always contact us. And do you have any questions?
Board members? We appreciate you all.
Thank you.
We appreciate y'all.
Thank you very much, and again, sorry you had to wait so late.
Love
Alright.
that computer background.
Board members, CARES Act update.
Yes, ma'am, that's just for information. Hopefully you can open that attachment. You can see where you have allocated your CARES Act money so far. The column with the red numbers is the money that's been spent or set aside. And so that's where it's been obligated. So you can continue to move money around, so long as we haven't already signed a contract. For instance, in disbursement 2, you'll see $120,000 under broadband. That was for lit communities. We've entered that contract, so we wouldn't let you move that one around because we need to pay that bill when it arrives and so forth. That's kind of where things stand right now.
All right, any questions? General fund availability report.
Again, that's for your information.
Okay.
You get this at least quarterly, and so this is the latest one. It shows you have 5.3 million of unobligated funds.
All right, we will now move on to citizen comment. Is there anyone here wishing to speak? Seeing and hearing none, we will now close citizen comment and move on to matters for members of the board. Mr. Ayers, Ms. Martin,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Pugh,
No, ma'am.
Ms. Moore,
No, ma'am.
Ms. Tucker, nope. We will now move to closed session to deal with the personnel matter. Mr. Clough, can you lead us into that, please?
Yes, I think what you're looking for is a motion pursuant to code section 2.2-3711, subsection A1, for the purposes of discussion of of personnel matters relating to a specific individual, including personnel actions with relation to that person and/or reviews, specifically relating to a department head.
Thank you. Motion on the floor, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Now going to closed session.
Yeah, no.
Somebody, Mr. Lockley, will you bring us out of closed session, please?
Yes, ma'am. I think that what you're looking for, Madam Chair, is a motion under Code Section 2.23712D of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended to certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, only such matters as were identified in the motion to go into closed session were talked about in closed session. And secondly, that all matters that were discussed in closed session were proper items for closed session.
It's exactly what we're looking for. Motion on the floor by Mr. Lockley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. You made a motion by Mr. Pugh, right?
Motion was by Mr. Pugh, absolutely. Yes, thank you, Mr. Pugh. All right, now we need to certify this.
By roll call vote.
By roll call, Mr. Ayers.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Aye.
Ms. Moore. Aye. Ms. Tucker. Aye. Gentlemen, ladies, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, board members.